Wait, are you trying to use the bathroom? Dirty old people are banned from using it. We use that toilet too, you know. If you guys use it, our brand new toilet will get dirty immediately, won't it? Sorry, but you'll have to make do with peeing in the bushes outside. Oh, and don't do it in the garden, okay? If you dirty our precious home even a little, I'll never forgive you. Both we were taken aback by Emily and Wilson's words. A bathroom ban? That's just unthinkable. No matter how much they dislike us, such behavior is inexcusable. We have endured harsh words from our son and his wife before. As we're the kind of people who dislike fights, we've always quietly accepted their treatment. But now, we've reached our limit. We need to make it clear what happens when they make enemies of us. I started plotting a scenario for revenge. I'm sure this plan will work. My name is Sarah, a 62-year-old homemaker. I live with my husband. I met Johnson, my husband, at the company where we used to work. After Johnson's persistent pursuit, we started dating and smoothly transitioned into marriage. I was blessed with a son with Johnson. A lively boy. We named him Wilson and raised him with care. Wilson grew up healthily and eventually found a job. He married a woman named Emily and built a family. I remember the feeling genuinely happy when he first introduced Emily to us. But that happiness didn't last long. Everything went awry when I realized why she had married him. After marriage, they lived with us. One day, Wilson and Johnson were out, and only Emily and I were at home. At first, we were chatting amicably in the living room, but then Emily's mobile phone rang. It seemed she received a call. Sorry, Sarah, it looks like it's from a friend. With that, she excused herself and went back to her room. Left alone in the living room, I decided to clean the house to pass the time. As I was passing Emily's room, I inadvertently overheard her conversation. Her voice was so loud that I couldn't help but hear. Seriously, those old folks are living too long. If they suddenly died, we could get the inheritance. I married into the family for the president's fortune, but this is just hell. Her words felt like a cold shower to me. Actually, Johnson's father was the president of well-known top-tier company. However, the company was set to be inherited by his brother. Still, being part of the president's family, Johnson had some share of the wealth. It turned out Emily had married Wilson with that very intention in mind. They probably believed that once we passed away, the inheritance would become theirs. In fact, we had always treated Wilson and his wife with this in mind. Such behavior couldn't be tolerated. I shared this with Johnson that night. Initially, he was shocked, saying, "Really?" but he trusted my words. After discussing, we decided not to act immediately but to observe if Emily would reveal her true intentions. Maybe, in the meantime, she might change her attitude and start treating us like a real family. It was a decision made with the faint hope. But things didn't go as expected. To test Wilson and his wife, we observed their behavior. We invited them out, asked for help with chores, and so on. Gradually, they seemed to find us a nuisance, and their attitude changed. "Wilson, you're free now, right? I'm sorry to ask you, but can you give me a hand to do the laundry? My back hurts." One day, seeing Wilson relaxing in the living room, I asked him. Although Emily had been the one to speak harshly that day, Johnson suspected they might be in this together. We suspect that maybe Wilson feels in the same way. So, I started to approach Wilson to understand his feelings. At my request, Wilson looked up from his mobile phone, sighed with annoyance, and said, "Can't you do that yourself, Mom? You're a mother, after all. Shouldn't you be able to handle the household chores by yourself?" He then returned his gaze to his mobile phone. It became clear that he had no intention of helping. His attitude seemed to say, "I have no intention of being a family with you." This thought sent a chill down my spine. Don't say that. Family should help each other when in trouble. You have your own family now, Wilson. You need to act responsibly. My voice trembled, reflecting my fear. If my suspicions were true, it meant that even Wilson, whom we had lovingly raised, was betraying us. That was something I couldn't bear. Desperately, I pleaded, "Please help me." But Wilson didn't even look up from his phone or show any sign of getting up from the sofa. His unwillingness to help was evident. Persisting in my request, he let out a heavy sigh and continued. "Look," he continued. "Enough is enough. Yes, you're my mother, but that doesn't give you the right to be selfish. I have a wife, Emily, and I need to work for her. I'm already exhausted every day, and now you're asking me to do chores too? That's cruel. Don't ask us to do such things anymore. We are essentially strangers." Essentially strangers. Those words pierced deeply into my heart. It confirmed my fears. Both Wilson and Emily seem to be after Johnson's inheritance. They seem indifferent to us, thinking as long as they receive the inheritance, that's all that matters. This betrayal from family deeply wounded me. Yet, we couldn't foresee something even worse. I immediately told Johnson about Wilson's possible intent for the inheritance. Johnson, seemingly already convinced. "I thought as much." He nodded. And so, our family dynamics became distorted. Amidst all this, Wilson and his wife decided to move out. When they brought it up, we couldn't help but feel relieved. By then, living with them had become unbearable. Even sharing the same house with them was distressing. They wanted to live in a new single-family home, which would require a significant amount of money. To hasten their move, we decided to provide financial assistance. "Dad, Mom, thanks. Family is indeed valuable." Knowing the underlying meaning of Wilson's words, we couldn't genuinely rejoice. The construction of their new house was completed, and it was the day of their move. They packed up some of their belongings and left the house. A week later, we visited their new home with a housewarming gift. Though I didn't want to go, I remembered my father-in-law teaching about maintaining certain courtesies, so I decided to endure it a bit. Nice house, isn't it? Smells like new construction. Their home was more beautiful than expected, probably due to the money spent on it. After being shown around various rooms, when we gave the celebration gift in the living room. "Thank you so much," she said. She seemed pleased as she put away the gift. While chatting in the living room, I felt the need to use the restroom. "Where's the bathroom? May I use it?" I said. To my request, Wilson and his wife responded unbelievably. "Wait, are you trying to use the bathroom? Dirty old people are banned from using it. We use that toilet too, you know. If you use it, our brand new toilet will get dirty immediately, won't it?" Followed by his words, "Sorry, but you'll have to make do with peeing in the bushes outside. Oh, and don't do it in the garden, okay? If you dirty our precious home even a little, I'll never forgive you." Their words made me feel dizzy. It was too cruel, regardless of how much they disliked us. At that moment, they were like strangers to me. There was no familial affection left. That's why I decided to start my revenge. I planned to ruin them thoroughly. I secretly devised a scenario for it. Exchanging glances with Johnson, who was just as stunned. It seemed Johnson was thinking the same as me. "We don't want to be a nuisance, and since we've given the housewarming gift, maybe we should leave if we're not wanted." There was no reason to stay in their house any longer. We had fulfilled our duty by giving a housewarming gift. If they were going to be that terrible to us, we didn't need to stay. Right. Our presence here only seems to bother them. It's better to leave now. I had anticipated being unwelcome, but to be told things like being banned from using the toilet or to go in the bushes was too much. "Yeah, leave right now. Don't want this house getting old and musty because of some old people. Don't stay any longer than necessary." Old people making the house musty? That's just absurd. Realizing how much my own son despised us was a bit of a shock. But I couldn't see Wilson as my son anymore. I'd deal with these conflicting feelings later. For now, the priority was to leave. "And don't come over unless absolutely necessary. We've got your gift, so you're of no use to us now. Maybe see you at the baby shower, but that's it." Even though she demands us to leave right away, she still wants a gift. What greedy people. Though giving them gifts was burdensome, we were fortunately not short on money. So, to keep the peace and calm myself, I accepted it. Then let's sever ties. If you despise us so much, it must be hard to continue as a family, right? Anything is fine with me as long as we don't have to deal with you and your family, who are troublesome. Are they high on their own anger? Emily quickly agreed to my suggestion, likely not understanding the consequences of her decision. We gathered our things and left Wilson's house. They hardly even saw us out. But this was just the beginning of our revenge. I couldn't wait to see them fall into the hell we were about to create. I can't help but look forward to that moment. Back home, I shared the revenge plan with Johnson. He said, "This is going to be interesting." He laughed and was in agreement with my plan. They say spouses become like mirrors of each other, and I really felt that was true. Since then, we had been very busy. To complete our revenge, various preparations were necessary. Before we knew it, about a week had passed. Despite being busy, we were leading a calm life without any major incidents with Wilson and his wife. But it seemed about time for a disruption. As I was expecting this, the phone rang. Johnson and I exchanged glances. Sure enough, it was Wilson on the line. I put the call on speaker so Johnson could hear and spoke to Wilson. "Hello, Wilson? What's up? Did something happen?" It was surprising he called so nonchalantly after what had happened. Normally, after such an incident, I'd think it would be awkward to make a phone call. But Wilson, sounding cornered and desperate, blurted out. "What's happened, you ask? What have you two done? Thanks to you, I'm in a terrible situation. Do something about it now." Wilson's statement was disjointed, and I couldn't understand what he was talking about. Of course, I had orchestrated this revenge, so I could guess what might be happening to him. "What exactly do you mean? Tell me everything from the start, I don't understand." Since I had no idea what he was accusing us of, I couldn't respond. Urging Wilson to explain, he started his story in an angry tone. It seemed the trouble started when he went to work after the incident. While working, Wilson noticed something unusual. The looks directed at him by his colleagues were unusually cold. Wilson, who tends to be overly concerned with others' perceptions, found it unbearable to stay at work and left early that day. Hoping it was just his imagination, he went to work again the next day, but the cold stares remained unchanged. He confronted a colleague about it, but all he got in response was, "Ask yourself." Just that, and they wouldn't tell me anything more. Furthermore, it wasn't just his department colleagues who were giving him cold stares. It seemed as if everyone in the company, from high-ranking superiors to colleagues in other departments, were looking at him with disdain. He felt as if every employee he encountered was regarding him with contempt. Despite racking his brain, Wilson couldn't think of a reason for the cold treatment at work. He hadn't made any mistakes on the job. Eventually, he surmised that my husband, Johnson, a member of the company's founding family, and I must have been involved. "What have you two done? Because of you, I can't work anymore. You need to take responsibility." Wilson lashed out at us one-sidedly. Indeed, the frigid reception he faced wasn't a figment of his imagination, it was a part of our scheme. We had promptly informed my brother-in-law about the ordeal with Wilson and his wife. He values us greatly and was furious upon hearing it. Unfortunately, my brother-in-law isn't one to keep secrets. He inadvertently leaked our story to his secretary and other managerial staff. Soon enough, the entire company knew about their misdeeds, and everyone began to scorn Wilson. "This is too much. Fix it now. I can't work in that kind of environment." Indeed, someone like him, who is easily swayed by others' opinions, couldn't possibly continue working in such a hostile environment. However, his employment was actually a result of nepotism. He had been lazy during his student days, lacking notable educational achievements or qualifications. Since he couldn't find a satisfactory job, his sympathetic uncle hired him at his company. Could someone like Wilson really manage a proper job search? From my perspective, it seemed unlikely. That company was his only option. Yet, working there under current circumstances was impossible for him. Please, you have to do something. I can't work under those stairs. You caused this, right? Then fix it, he yelled over the phone. But I had no intention of forgiving him. We've disowned you, remember? Why are you asking for help now? That was all Emily's doing. I always considered you and Dad as my family. Families are supposed to help each other, right? So, help me. Indeed, families should help each other. But he had misunderstood the meaning of family. You help because they are your family, not treat them as family only when help is needed. Feeling the conversation was pointless, I ended the call with him. Afterward, my phone kept ringing incessantly, so I blocked his number. That was how we completely severed ties with our own son. Our revenge was far from over. The day after our conversation with Wilson, my phone rang again. This time, it was Emily. Sarah, please open the entrance. I have something to discuss, including about Wilson. Let me in quickly. As soon as I answered the phone, she blurted out such things. It seemed that she, thinking it best to resolve matters directly, was waiting at the entrance of our house, eager to talk. Well, it was our former house, after all. Emily, we're not at that house anymore. Indeed, it was our former home. Since then, we had sold the house where we lived with them and moved to a new home. A brand new, sparkling single-family home. Our new home, chosen with a slightly competitive spirit, was more spacious and grander than Wilson and Emily's. What? Then where are you? Things are terrible here. If we don't know where you are, how can we receive the inheritance? Tell me your current address. She seemingly failed to comprehend the meaning of disownment. To disown means no longer being family. An inheritance is not passed to non-family members. We had even updated our will to ensure that, come what may, Wilson and his wife would not receive any inheritance. However, she appeared to misunderstand, thinking that if some family connection remained, they could still inherit. Emily, you can no longer receive any inheritance. We've disowned you, remember? We're no longer family. Why would we give an inheritance to someone who's not family? I was astonished at her lack of understanding. Her ignorance was so profound that it was almost laughable. Surprised by my response, she exclaimed. What? She exclaimed in a loud voice. What? I didn't know that. That's a real problem if we can't get the inheritance. Let's forget about the disownment, okay? We're still family, right? Her self-centeredness was astounding. It was baffling how someone could be so obsessed with money. Her illogical and selfish statements left me speechless. Misinterpreting my silence as agreement, she continued. How about we live together? You've moved out of this house, right? I just realized how lonely it is without you, Sarah. Our house is big, so you can live here too. Let's live together as a family. And yet, this was the same person who had once called us dirty old people and drove us out. Now she was even suggesting living together, clearly all for the sake of inheritance. It was obvious that restarting life with them was out of the question. I wondered if she even understood that. Could she really not understand even that? Sorry, but we'll have to decline. And from now on, please don't contact us. We've disowned you, so we're no longer family. And non-family members won't inherit anything. Please understand and give up. No! That's unacceptable! Please, Sarah, forgive us! When I firmly declared our disownment, Emily seemed to finally grasp its meaning and desperately clung to any hope. But my decision was final. And likely Johnson's as well. Therefore, I ended the call with her and immediately blocked her number. This way, she couldn't contact us again. They wouldn't know our current whereabouts. Essentially, we've completed our disownment. We felt a sense of relief, having cleanly severed this unpleasant connection. Later, I heard from acquaintances and brother-in-law that Wilson and Emily began fighting incessantly over the inheritance and their jobs, leading to a divorce. They argued bitterly over alimony and property division, even hiring lawyers and taking their disputes to court. After the divorce was finalized, Emily returned to her parents' home. She seemed certain that her biological parents would accept her, but when they actually saw her and learned of the situation, they were furious. Apparently, she was promptly kicked out of the house. Wilson, having quit his job, struggled to find new employment and is now working tirelessly in part-time roles to make ends meet. Meanwhile, Johnson and I are enjoying a peaceful and happy life. The weight of the Wilson affair lifted, we've found newfound freedom. We're planning to go on a trip soon, taking brother-in-law and his wife along. Johnson and I have been making plans for this trip together. It's our way of thanking him for his help in our revenge. We are carefully planning this vacation. Family is about supporting each other and helping in times of need. But that doesn't always mean being related by blood. Some, like Wilson and Emily, disregard even their own family. This incident has deeply ingrained that lesson in us. Pain ran down my left cheek along with a banging sound. I couldn't quite grasp what was happening. Why did a stranger woman just slap me? It's because your husband got me pregnant, she declared with a triumphant look on her face, which only added to my confusion. For 28 years of my life, I had always been single. A few days later, an unexpected truth comes to light. I'm Kelly, 28 years old. I work for an IT company and live alone. Far from being married, I don't even have a boyfriend. Lately, my parents press, "Quick, I want to see my grandchildren." But I'm troubled with it. Right now, I find my job really fulfilling. Therefore, I don't feel any rush to get married, and I believe that as long as I'm leading a fulfilling life, that's what matters most. However, recently, apart from the excessive expectations of my parents, I have another concern, or rather, a troubling situation. It feels like I'm being followed by someone. It might sound exaggerated to call it stalking, but every few days, I feel someone watching me intently. It started 2 months ago. After work, I took the bus to my nearest station. As I walked from the station to my house, I constantly felt someone's presence behind me. I felt a strong gaze and turned around, but no one was there. Yet, the sound of footsteps continued from behind, and no matter when I turned, I couldn't catch sight of anyone. That day, I convinced myself it was just my imagination and forcibly shrugged it off. But the same situation continued 3 or 4 days a week, and I couldn't help but feel it wasn't just my imagination. Who could be following me? And for what purpose? I haven't had any conflicts in my personal relationships. I even tried to recall if I had gotten into any trouble, but nothing came to mind. In fact, aside from work, I hardly interacted with people, so that situation was baffling. Before I knew it, I was feeling more and more afraid every day. My concentration at work even began to decline because of that. Then one day, my colleague Rala, who I usually got along with, approached me. "Hey Kelly, you've been looking down lately. Are you okay? Are you feeling unwell?" "No, it's not that, just, you know. You were doing so well at work, but lately, you've been making mistakes, right? Even yesterday, you were pointed out by our boss." "I know. My concentration has been a bit." "What's wrong? It's not like you to be this down." "I'm worried." She looked at me with genuine concern. Feeling too burdened to keep it to myself any longer, I decided to confide in her. "Actually, I've been feeling like someone's been following me recently." "What? You mean like a stalker?" "Well, calling it stalking might be a bit much. But yeah, a few days a week, from the bus station to my house, I feel like I'm being followed." "That's scary. Isn't that dangerous? Knowing where you live and all, you should talk to the police." "But isn't that a bit overreacting?" "Better to do something now than regret it later. You should deal with it as soon as possible." Rala. To think she'd take my seemingly hopeless story so seriously. Maybe I was being naive, but should I really talk to the police? Her earnest expression made it clear she was genuinely concerned about me. After being persuaded repeatedly by her, I decided to visit the police on my way home that day. A few hours later, at the police station on my way from the station to my house, I confided my recent unease to the police. Lately, I feel like someone's been following me. I've never actually seen them though. You've never seen them? Then how do you know you're being followed? From the bus station to my house, I can definitely feel someone trailing me. But whenever I turn around, there's no one there. Well, without knowing the person's description, there's not much we can do. I know, but I really feel someone's presence. If anything else happens, please come back. We can help more if you see who it is. Yes, please. I was practically sent home against my will. Frustration and anger at the police for not being able to do anything swirled inside me. Although about 2 months had passed since then, the situation was still the same. I still felt followed several days a week on my way home from the station. I'd never caught a glimpse of the person, but there was one thing I'd noticed newly. The person following me was a woman. Until then, I hadn't paid much attention to the sound of footsteps, probably just regular sneakers. Yet, a few days before, I had heard the sound of heels. And that day, again, I heard the sound of heels behind me. As usual, I turned around, no one was there. But someone was definitely following me. The fact that wearing heels meant it was a woman. So, I tried to think again if there was any issue in my social circle. No matter how much I thought, nothing came to mind. Work was going smoothly, and I was not having conflicts with other employees. I didn't have a romantic partner, so there was no chance of being entangled in love troubles. I had not done anything that would warrant resentment.
Could it be a woman who cares about me? No, that's unlikely for someone like me. So for what? There's no reason for someone to follow me.
With these uneasy thoughts, time just kept passing. About a month later, I finally came face to face with her. As usual, I was walking from the station, and sure enough, I heard the sound of heels behind me. Again, I thought. I quickened my pace. Then I heard a dull sound from behind.
What was that sound?
I instinctively turned around and saw a woman lying on the ground. It seemed she stumbled over a curb and fell. She grimaced as she slowly got up. I immediately rushed over to her, the woman who was presumably my stalker, and spoke to her.
Your knee is bleeding. Are you okay?
You're the one who's been following me, right? Do you need something from me? Firstly, who are you? Just as I was about to say that, she stood up. Without saying anything, she ran back the way she came.
What's going on? She's been following me, but ignores me when I talk to her. If she had something to say, she should just say it.
The woman, who appeared to be a few years younger than me, was undoubtedly the person who had been following me. But I didn't recognize her face, nor did I know her name. All I could tell was that she was a petite, younger woman. Why was she following me? Why wouldn't she answer when I asked her what she wanted? Who on earth was she? The reality was far from what I had imagined, leaving me somewhat deflated. The fear I had felt until then had almost vanished, leaving only questions. A few days later, as the identity of my stalker became clearer, my wariness faded. Knowing the stalker was a petite woman somehow made me feel less threatened. That day, I was aware of footsteps behind me as usual, but I didn't think much of it and continued on my way home. However, I felt the footsteps quicken, unlike usual.
What? They seem faster than before. Am I going to be caught up?
A trickle of sweat ran down my back. Before I knew it, I was walking faster, but her pace didn't slow down. If I sped up, the steps would quicken in response. I was sure it would catch up if that continued. So, I decided to stop abruptly. Confirming that the footsteps also stopped, I turned around forcefully. There was no one there. But on closer inspection, I could see white heels peeking out from behind a pole. I slowly approached and saw the same woman, who had silently left before. I stood in front of her, legs slightly apart, and looked straight into her eyes as I confronted her.
What's your purpose? Following me around like this every day? Silent again? You wouldn't be following me for no reason, right?
Enough already! What do you want? If you keep ignoring me, I'll take you straight to the police. It was then, as I said so forcefully, that I felt a sharp pain on my left cheek. I couldn't comprehend what was happening.
What? Did I just get slapped?
The pain in my slapped cheek intensified. Holding my cheek, I muttered, "That hurts." And then I heard a scoff. When I instinctively looked up, there she was, smirking maliciously. With that unpleasant smile, she said, "Because your husband got me pregnant." What? What did you just say? Didn't you hear? I said I'm pregnant with your husband's child. My husband's child? Did you just say that? Yeah. How does it feel to have your husband taken by me? Confusion clouded my mind. I didn't have a husband. First of all, I was not even married. Trying to clear the misunderstanding, I blurted out, "No, wait. You must be mistaken." But as soon as I said that, a dull pain struck my right cheek. Of course, it was her. She had slapped my cheek with the opposite hand that time. That moment, the anger I had been holding back exploded. I had tried to keep things calm, assuming she was a stranger, but then I had reached my limit. I glared at her and said firmly, "What are you doing? How dare you slap someone out of the blue? What kind of person are you? Oh, scary. Are you that upset because a young and pretty lady stole your husband? Stop talking nonsense. I told you, you've got the wrong person. Stop joking. Anyway, can you just get a divorce? There's a baby from your husband in my belly, you know." Ignoring my words entirely, she kept pushing her narrative. My irritation peaked, and I stated the plain truth. "I'm not married, you know." Huh? At my statement, her expression froze. Seizing the moment of her confusion, I pressed on relentlessly. "Did you hear? I said I'm not married. I don't even have a boyfriend, actually." Hold on. What are you talking about? That's my line. You're talking about your husband's child, but I don't have a husband. I'm not even married. Don't tell me you're pretending not to know. Just so you know, I won't be fooled. I don't know what you're talking about. I don't care whose child you're carrying, but it has nothing to do with me. Got it? Now go back home." With that, I left her behind and continued on my way home. I could hear her screams from behind, but I ignored them and headed to my house.
What was that all about? Husband and child. Who is she mistaking me for? I'm exhausted from all this.
Once home, I lay on the sofa for a while, but the fatigue didn't fade. Feeling too tired to cook, I decided to go to the grocery store nearby. After shopping at the store about a 5-minute walk from the house, I stepped outside. Suddenly, large raindrops began to fall.
Oh no. What should I do? I didn't bring an umbrella.
While sheltering from the rain at the store, someone tapped me on the shoulder. I turned around to find a familiar-looking man. I think you're... I'm Tommy. We live in the neighbor. This kind of thing has happened before, right? I'm Kelly. Thanks for last time. My pleasure. I can walk you to the house today too, if you like. Thank you, that would be great. No problem, come on under the umbrella. The man who offered me shelter under his umbrella was Tommy, a resident of the same area. I knew of him because we often saw each other at the bus station on weekday mornings, but I didn't know his name. A few months ago from that day, I had also been caught in the rain while shopping at the grocery store. He had happened to be there and offered to share his umbrella. I remembered having walked back to the house with him under one umbrella. For that day, once again, I found myself under his care. As we chatted about trivial things on our way to the house, suddenly from behind, a shouting voice rang out. "Hey!" I turned around instinctively, and there was the stalker woman. She approached and grabbed my collar. "This awful woman. So you are Tommy's woman after all. Last time and this time too. Sharing an umbrella together, unforgivable. Let go! Tommy is just a neighborhood. Don't play dumb. Tommy is going to marry me. You better disappear fast. Get a divorce." She gripped my collar, shook me violently, and then pushed me away forcefully. I stumbled and fell hard. Tommy rushed to me and asked, "Are you okay?" As I nodded, the stalker woman shouted at him, her face red with rage. "Tommy! Why are you caring about this woman? I'm serious about you. Stop it. To begin with, I don't even like you. No! I won't give up. Break up with her quickly. She's not my woman. She just lives in the same area." Huh? You've just been misunderstanding and resenting her for nothing. I'm not even married. I just lied about being married because you kept stalking me. That can't be true, can it? As she kneels in confusion, Tommy stares at her sternly. Looking down at her in the rain, he says coldly, "I only picked up your wallet once and took you to dinner as a thank you. But you've been persistently following me ever since. To be clear, you're a nuisance. Please, stop involving yourself with me." Wait, Tommy! The atmosphere was so nice during dinner. That's just what you think. I never felt that way. You keep contacting me despite my ignoring you. If I'm ignoring you, take the hint. I will never like you. If you show up in front of me again, I'll take you to the police. After his blunt statement, the woman slowly stood up. Staggering, she turned on her heel and left. Since then, she never appeared in front of me again. I later learned from Tommy that he had only dined with her once and there was no romantic relationship. She probably mistook me for his wife and fabricated lies to break us up. I was merely caught in the middle, an utterly bothersome situation. Afterward, I got the woman's name and contact information from Tommy and consulted a lawyer. Even though it was a misunderstanding, I decided to claim damages for being suddenly slapped. A few weeks later, Tommy said, "I want to apologize for what happened." And we went out for a meal. That led to us regularly going out together, and recently, he asked me out. It was a terrible start, but in a way, I have her to thank for bringing me closer to him. Though the beginning was the worst, I'm grateful to her for leading me to meet him. Kelly, I'm really sorry about that time. I dragged you into my problem. It's okay. I don't mind anymore. Besides, I'm happy now. If anything comes up, feel free to talk to me. I'm truly your boyfriend now. Thank you. I'll count on you if anything happens. There might be more people like her in the future. But I'm sure he'll protect me. And one day, I hope to build a happy family with him. I was standing there, unable to move or understand what was happening to me, when my husband Harrison, who was next to me, asked, "Are you okay?" It was then that I realized I had been doused with water. In front of me was Maëlle Jeanette, holding a cup and smirking nastily. "This is not your place. You're shamelessly overstepping. How many times do I have to tell you you're not welcome here?" Jeanette's angry shout filled the room at Raphael Frank's funeral. My name is Mila, a 35-year-old self-employed business owner. I met Harrison through a mutual acquaintance 6 years ago, and we married after I got pregnant. We've had our ups and downs, but now we live happily with our 1-year-old daughter. Harrison's family owns a retail shop selling miscellaneous goods and vintage clothing. Harrison, their only son, went to college in Boston, intending to take over the family business. However, after landing a job at a major corporation post-graduation, his parents easily conceded. "There's no need for you to take over our debt-ridden business. We're proud you can work at a prestigious company. Don't worry about us, build your own family in Boston." Encouraged by his father Frank, Harrison worked diligently in Boston and achieved a promotion to a managerial position at a young age. We met, quickly started dating, and before we knew it, I was pregnant. Since our relationship had been headed towards marriage, the sequence of events have changed, leading to us announcing both our marriage and pregnancy to our parents at the same time. My parents, who live in another state, were delighted with my marriage and pregnancy, except for Jeanette. "What? Pregnant? With him?" I still vividly remember Jeanette's words to me during my first visit to Harrison's family home. Frank scolded Jeanette, but he only made excuses for her in a low voice to me, especially regarding Harrison, saying, "She doesn't mean it. And Jeanette, having her son's girlfriend over for the first time, offered nothing at all. It wasn't naivety or an oversight, but a deliberate display of not offering anything. Pregnant? Are you going to have the baby? Then you must continue the environment I provided for my son and raise your child the same way. I'll teach you how. Wait a minute. I'm planning to take maternity leave and then return to work, so I appreciate your concern, but we will decide and manage our child's upbringing. Though I was reluctant to argue with my MIL on our first meeting, I felt that it would be important for her to understand our stance. Jeanette, clearly not expecting me to talk back, glared at me, her face filled with surprise and anger. Then she pressed on, "What kind of job forces you to work instead of raising your child?" Jeanette seemed to be implying dissatisfaction with her son's salary at a major corporation, aggressively questioning me. When I mentioned that I was the secretary to the president of a publicly traded company, Jeanette looked at me scornfully and said, "That's distasteful." Jeanette appeared to have a stereotype of secretaries as glamorous women serving powerful men or attractive but incompetent at their jobs. Is Harrison being deceived? Are you really marrying him? She asked repeatedly. Harrison, with a strained laugh, simply said, "Yes." He didn't support me but instead laughed it off, eager to leave the situation, which left me feeling disappointed and unsure about our marriage. However, Frank, having listened to the whole conversation, was different. It's tough to be a secretary. Before I was married, I worked at a company where the bosses had secretaries. It's a really difficult job. This idea of secretaries being distasteful is so outdated," he said, criticizing Jeanette. Jeanette, not expecting to be reprimanded, turned red and hastily said, "I need to step out for a bit," and left the house. Frank later reassured me, "If you have any troubles, you can always come to us for advice." Hearing that, I felt for the first time that I was accepted as a member of the family. After that, since our marriage was sudden due to the pregnancy, we didn't have a wedding ceremony and just completed the paperwork. After the birth, we had talked about having a small ceremony with just close family once things settled down, but those plans fell through dramatically. What? Dad has cancer? Harrison was shaken by the sudden news, and since I was worried about him going alone, I went with him to the hospital where Frank was admitted. As soon as we arrived at the hospital, we were called by a doctor and, without any mental preparation, were informed about Frank's limited time left. Entering his room, we saw Frank with numerous tubes attached to his arm. It was painfully hard to look at. Noticing us, Frank gave a sorry smile and said, "My apologies." I wondered why Frank, who had done nothing wrong, was apologizing, but soon understood. Frank had been hospitalized for several days, and Jeanette hadn't visited him at all. According to Frank, since he was given a terminal diagnosis, Jeanette thought he wouldn't know what was happening and took the opportunity to go on trips and shopping sprees. Frank didn't know for sure since he was in the hospital, but he heard it from neighbors who visited him, so it was likely true. Frank, unable to prepare his own change of pajamas and underwear during his hospital stay, said to us apologetically,
"I'm sorry to ask this so soon after your wedding, but I need your help."
Since my pregnancy was stable, I had no problem going to the hospital in the morning, so I gladly took on the role of caring for Frank. I was originally planning to take maternity leave at 9 months pregnant, but with Frank's care needed, I applied for caregiving leave at my company, planning to transition it into maternity leave. But even this didn't go as planned. With Frank's hospitalization, Jeanette began neglecting housework entirely to indulge in her leisure activities every day. Consequently, the house became cluttered with garbage, and Jeanette, who was somewhat osteoporotic, slipped, fell, and fractured her bones. Now, not only Frank's, but also Jeanette's care fell onto us. "Please, just until Mom can walk again, can we live together?" Frank's cancer treatment was stabilizing, and he was close to being discharged when Jeanette fractured her bone. My husband asked me, and I reluctantly agreed to live together for a limited time, but this decision would later become a source of great regret. "You slowpoke! Hurry up and prepare the meal!" Jeanette, now having difficulty walking and using crutches, started hurling verbal abuse at me due to her frustration of being immobile. I had to clean the room Jeanette dirtied for Frank's return, but with my growing belly, it was hard labor, and I struggled to move as I wanted. Jeanette mercilessly berated me and would hit me with her crutches when nearby. I protected my belly as best I could, but my arms became covered in bruises. Such a big target, easy to hit. I was terrified, thinking this was the same woman who had once given birth. I reported Jeanette's harassment to Harrison, but he would just say, "It's only for now. She's just stressed because of her injury." He showed no signs of helping me, and I felt increasingly cornered. And then, Jeanette, with her mobility impaired, brazenly started inviting men to the house during weekdays when Harrison was at work. "Jeanette, does Frank know about this?" "It doesn't matter. He won't be returning to this house anyway. His time is almost up. This house and all the property will be mine." Jeanette said this and laughed loudly with the man who seemed to be her affair partner. She even threatened me, saying if I spoke to anyone about this, she would make me suffer. The repeated scenes of Jeanette's verbal and physical abuse haunted me every night, leading to severe headaches and palpitations that kept me awake. Eventually, I miscarried the baby. "I can't even see my grandchild's face because of you. You useless thing." Jeanette cruelly berated me as I returned home after the medical procedure. "You're banned from this house. Get out now." Forced out of the house, I went straight to my company and submitted my resignation. My boss noticed something was off and repeatedly asked me not to do anything foolish. When I mentioned, "My baby is gone," he said to contact him anytime if I needed anything, regardless of our professional relationship. He accepted my resignation without further questions. Afterwards, on my way to the courthouse to collect divorce papers, I decided to visit Frank for the final goodbye. It had been a few days since I last visited Frank's hospital room, and he was visibly surprised and concerned to see me, which brought me to tears. I had always kept silent about the treatment I received from Jeanette, not wanting to worry Frank, who was battling his illness. But Frank, who had noticed bruises on my arms before, asked me to tell him everything. Crying, I poured out everything that had happened. Frank kept apologizing, and his face was contorted with anger. "This is definitely a case for divorce. But I can't just let them get away with this. I want to fight back. I hate to ask this, but can you help me with one last request?" After listening to my story, Frank proposed a plan for revenge against his wife and son. Feeling empowered by Frank's support, I felt ready to confront the situation, no longer wanting to be a victim. "I don't want to just cry myself to sleep anymore." Whispering these words, Frank weakly grasped my hand and said, "Let's do this together." Subsequently, I stayed in the hospital room as Frank's attendant until his discharge. As soon as Frank and I arrived home, Jeanette snapped. "What, you brought that useless woman too? You didn't clean the house, it's still dirty. Clean it up now." Furthermore, she accused, "Where have you been these past few days? You must have been with some man, right?" When Frank told her I had been caring for him in the hospital, she was left speechless and silently left the house. Soon after, as planned with Frank, I installed indoor cameras and wireless listening devices in various places. This was to gather evidence of infidelity. As expected, when I accompanied Frank to the hospital for outpatient treatment, Jeanette confidently invited men into our home. "We have the evidence," Frank said. Frank contacted a lawyer friend and began the process to disinherit Jeanette. Next, while Jeanette was away on a trip, Frank arranged for a negotiator to come to our home and create an official will. This was to prevent Jeanette from forging a will in Frank's name. Later, I started the process of taking over Frank's retail business, consulting a lawyer again. Despite the taxes and other financial issues that came with inheriting the business, I had a plan to recover the costs, so I decided to take it over. Honestly, I've been running the business just doing what I like, not really thinking about profit. But I want you to take this as compensation for the harm my family caused you, Mila. I was hesitant to accept the company and its real estate, but considering it as Frank's final gesture of goodwill, I gladly agreed. "Frank, I'll protect this company, so don't worry." As I assured him, Frank smiled at me. After several hospital visits for chemotherapy and outliving the initial prognosis, Frank peacefully passed away at home, just as I was getting used to managing the business. Finally. Doctors' life expectancy predictions are so unreliable. Let's quickly finish the funeral and turn this house and land into cash. Despite Frank having just passed away, I was unable to contain my anger at Jeanette's harsh words. "You're no longer needed. I don't need your care anymore, so leave this house right now." Treating me as if shooing away an animal, I responded to Jeanette, "I understand. I don't want to stay here for another minute." Saying that, I grabbed my pre-packed suitcase and prepared to leave. Harrison, who had always been like air to me, didn't try to stop me as he wanted to stay with his beloved mother. "Let's meet for the last time at the funeral," I said, and left for the weekly rental apartment I had arranged. After dropping off my luggage, I changed into morning clothes and headed to Frank's funeral for the final act of my revenge. Frank, beloved by the local residents, had attracted many people to his funeral. Getting out of the taxi, I was heading to the family's waiting room when Jeanette suddenly splashed water on me. "This is not your place! You're shamelessly overstepping! How many times do I have to tell you you're not welcome here?" After glaring at Harrison, who was feigning concern, I confronted Jeanette. "It seems you don't understand anything, Jeanette. Are you all right in the head? You'll be the one in trouble when I leave." As I spoke, Jeanette retorted, "Shut up! How dare you, just a son's wife!" And once again threw liquid at me. Even I had to exclaim, "What? If you're going to act like this, I'm leaving, and I won't forgive you no matter how much you cry or yell." With that, I walked away from Jeanette. I intended to take a taxi home immediately, but since the liquid Jeanette had thrown on me turned out to be alcohol, not water, I headed to the restroom to wash it off. It probably wouldn't stain, but I needed to clean the alcohol from my funeral attire and hair. After touching up my makeup, I exited the restroom to find an agitated Jeanette rushing towards me. "What is this? Explain yourself!" Not understanding what she meant, I listened silently as Jeanette ranted about the existence of another will separate from the one she was holding. Soon, relatives drawn by the commotion began to gather. "Jeanette, forging a will is a serious crime," I said. When she acted ignorant, I explained in front of the relatives. Frank had already made a will and stored it with the courts. So the one Jeanette has is a fake. Moreover, because of her forgery, Jeanette has lost her inheritance rights. As Jeanette began to make a scene, denying it, I elaborated further. Originally, Frank didn't want to leave his estate to Jeanette, so he had taken measures while he was alive. The process of disinheritance had already been filed at the court, meaning Jeanette could no longer inherit anything. The reasons are simple: Jeanette's failure to care for her husband, her routine verbal abuse, and her misappropriation and disposal of his property, to name a few. Since Jeanette denied it, I decided to play the recorded conversations from our home to the gathered relatives. "I can't be bothered with taking care of my husband. It doesn't pay to be diligent. Since he doesn't have much time left, it doesn't matter what I do, no one will know or care. Once I get the money, I'll be with my boyfriend." Hearing Jeanette's words from the speaker, the relatives were disillusioned. What further cornered Jeanette was her forgery of the will. I informed her that this could lead to losing her inheritance rights in civil terms and even possible imprisonment in criminal terms. Then Jeanette exclaimed, "Frank's company exists! That's mine!" Unfortunately, it wouldn't become hers. The reason being that I had already completed the business succession, and the company, which was only a storefront operation at the time, flourished under my management. Using my past skills, I launched an e-commerce shop, which turned out to be a success, bringing the company onto a profitable track. Jeanette had always misunderstood that I was merely assisting Frank and had never imagined that I had taken over the management. "Jeanette, if you want to take back the company, Please save up the taxes you need to pay to the government and then let me know. I said spitefully. Then Jeanette claimed that even if she didn't receive the inheritance, Harrison would. So I turned to Harrison and said, "Here are the divorce papers. You understand why I want a divorce, right? It's because you've always ignored Jeanette's harassment and never helped me. I'll be seeking compensation for the mental anguish I've suffered, no matter how small the amount. Also, I'll demand compensation from Jeanette for causing the breakdown of our marriage." Finally, Jeanette broke down, crying, "I just want money, anything," and apologized deeply. No matter what Jeanette did, I had no intention of forgiving her. An apology wouldn't bring back my precious baby. With tears of frustration, I left the funeral. Later, the divorce was finalized, and I confirmed that the compensation from Harrison and Jeanette had been fully deposited. It seemed they used the money from selling their family home for the compensation. About a year later, Harrison appeared before me, holding a marriage registration form. "I'm really sorry for hurting you. I only realized what true love was after I lost you. Please, let's try again. I've cut ties with my mother, so if it's okay with you, I'd like us to remarry," he said. Having gratitude towards Harrison's father, I couldn't dismiss him outright. Since Jeanette was the main cause of our divorce, I decided to give living together another try, on a trial basis. Months later, a new life arrived for us. Thus, we rebuilt our lives, and despite everything, we now live peacefully as a family of 3.
You're a nobody with no job or education. We don't need you in this house. As soon as my mother-in-law Rosalind said that, she splashed boiling water on me. Ouch! What the heck are you doing? Caught off guard by Rosalind's sudden action, I couldn't help but scream. Who does that? Splashing boiling water is insane. Luckily, I wasn't burned, but it could have been a disaster. See? That's what I'm saying. We don't need someone unemployed and uneducated like you. She splashed boiling water on me for that reason? For the record, it's not me who's unemployed, it's my husband. My anger towards Rosalind started to boil. If she's going that far, I'll give her what she wants. If that's how you feel, Rosalind, then fine. I'll leave this house. Finally decided to leave, huh? That makes things easier. Far from showing remorse, Rosalind seemed pleased that I was leaving. I couldn't stand to be here another second. I quickly packed my bags and returned to my parents' home that same day. Rosalind doesn't know that my husband is the one who's unemployed. I've been covering all the living expenses. Since quitting my job, I've been making about $30,000 a month from stocks. I won't have any trouble living on my own. If they can't pay their bills, that's not my problem. She'll regret kicking me out. 2 years ago, I married my husband, George. We both graduated from the same university and have known each other since then. Nita, where are you planning to work after graduation? Well, I haven't decided yet, but I'm hoping to get into a brokerage firm. We both majored in economics and vaguely hoped to work in finance. After graduation, we both managed to get jobs at different brokerage firms. As investment bankers, we were both busy and had little time to see each other. Yet our relationship remained strong, and 3 years after starting our jobs, my husband proposed. "I promise to make you happy. Will you marry me?" When I heard those words, I knew we could make it work. Living with the person I love couldn't be any better. Yes, I'd be honored. And so, we got married. I thought we'd live happily ever after. But then my husband said something unexpected. "Could you quit your job and live with my mom at our family home?" Why quit? We're newlyweds. Shouldn't we live alone? I'm worried about leaving my mom alone. I promise it won't be a burden on you. My father-in-law passed away from a heart attack when my husband was in middle school. He has no siblings, so it's just been him and Rosalind since then. I understand his concern for his mother. If you're that worried, okay, we'll live together. When we visited Rosalind to announce our marriage, she seemed decent enough, and I thought we could make it work since my husband would be there. I agreed to my husband's request, and we moved into his family home. 2 weeks later, we moved in and were welcomed by Rosalind. She looked genuinely happy that we'd be living together. We're looking forward to being part of the family. But the moment I greeted her, Rosalind's expression changed. Rosalind looked at me with cold eyes, her face filled with discontent. I didn't really need you here, you know. Did I hear that right? Rosalind mumbled something under her breath. I couldn't catch it clearly, so I just laughed it off. At that moment, I started to feel uneasy about living with Rosalind, but otherwise, the day passed without incident. The next morning, "Wake up! Make breakfast now!" I was jolted awake by Rosalind's shouting. What's going on this early in the morning? I checked the clock by my bed. It was only 4 a.m., and it was still dark outside. Why are you up so early? Just because you don't have a job doesn't mean you can laze around all day. Rosalind yelled at me, still half asleep. This is way too early, even if I don't have a job. I thought so, but didn't argue. Instead, I started making breakfast as she demanded. Throughout the cooking, Rosalind kept berating me. Hurry up! Why does it take you so long? You're so slow. About 30 minutes later, breakfast was finally ready. Sorry for the wait. About time. Can't you make it any faster? Rosalind was still complaining. No matter how fast you want it, it's physically impossible to do it quicker. I almost snapped back, but held my tongue. What's with this soup? It's too salty. Really? I don't think so. What? Are you saying there's something wrong with my taste buds? You want me to die from all this salt? That's not what I'm thinking at all. What is Rosalind talking about? Why is she being so harsh towards me? Feeling puzzled, I decided to ask Rosalind directly. Why are you so hard on me, Rosalind? What are you talking about? I'm not being hard on you. What, you want to make me the villain? No, that's not what I mean. I couldn't argue any further, feeling defeated by Rosalind's pressure. Once you're done cleaning up, start cleaning the house. After that, there's laundry. You won't have time to relax, you know. From that day on, Rosalind continued to make snide remarks, and I was mentally and physically drained. If I did the laundry, she'd say, "You left wrinkles." If I cleaned, she'd say, "You missed a spot." About a month after moving in with Rosalind, I felt like I was going to break down. I talked to my husband. Rosalind keeps making snide comments every day, and is really hard. Can you please ask her to stop? But my husband didn't react. I was momentarily irritated, but then I noticed something was off about him. His face was pale, and he seemed like he wanted to say something. Hey, what's wrong? Did something happen? When I asked, he slowly began to speak. Actually, I've been laid off. What? What are you talking about? Is this some kind of joke? I was stunned and couldn't comprehend what my husband was saying. The company is downsizing. I'm part of the restructuring. According to him, the company's profits had plummeted due to the economic downturn, leading to large-scale restructuring. So, starting tomorrow, you're unemployed? I can work for another month, but after that... My husband answered weakly. Fortunately, since quitting my job, I've been trading stocks, using the knowledge I gained while working at the brokerage firm. Struggling at first, we're now making around $30,000 a month, so we're not hurting for money. While comforting my downcast husband, I'd completely forgotten about the harassment I was getting from Rosalind. From the next day on, I endured Rosalind's bullying with all my might. Since my husband lost his job, giving up wasn't an option. I had to be the one to support him. That's what I thought. And a month later, just as he'd been warned, my husband was fired and became jobless. I'm really sorry. I'll find a job right away. Starting the day after he was fired, my husband began visiting the Employment Service Center, but gradually he just started lounging around the house all day. Hey, shouldn't you start looking for a job? I am, but there's just nothing good out there. He kept making excuses and didn't even try to find new work. I ended up covering our monthly expenses. The harassment from Rosalind escalated day by day. I had been strong when my husband first lost his job, but now I couldn't even muster the energy. I was living each day in a state of apathy. Then one day, my husband said he had to go out early in the morning, which was unusual. Maybe he's finally motivated to find a job. After seeing him off, I started cleaning as usual. Make sure you clean properly, okay? Rosalind was lounging on the living room sofa, sipping her tea elegantly. Must be nice. I was so annoyed looking at Rosalind that I ignored her. Then in the next moment, "Why are you ignoring me? You're my son's wife!" Rosalind suddenly lost her temper, stood up from the sofa, and confronted me. What's she so mad about? I continued to ignore Rosalind and kept cleaning. "How long will you ignore me? If you're not working, get out of this house!" Rosalind said this and threw boiling water at me. It must have been the hot water she prepared for her tea. "It's hot! What are you doing?" Caught off guard, I couldn't help but shout. Fortunately, the water wasn't boiling, so I avoided getting burned. "Finally, you respond! That's what I've been telling you! If you're not working, leave this house!" I had reached my limit with Rosalind, who was smirking as she spoke. "It's my husband who's not working. If that's how it's going to be, fine. Alright, I'll leave." "Good, make it quick." I didn't want to spend another second in this house. I packed my bags and decided to leave my in-laws' house that day. I couldn't care less what happens to Rosalind from now on. She'll regret kicking me out. I went straight back to my parents' house. They were surprised by my sudden return, but warmly welcomed me after I explained the situation. I waited for a call from my husband, but none came, not even a message. He doesn't care about me anymore. I felt a bit lonely, but I resolved not to contact him until he reached out. A month has passed since I returned to my parents' house, and I still haven't heard from my husband. My feelings for him have faded, and I'm considering contacting him to initiate a divorce. One day, the video doorbell at my parents' house rang early in the morning. When I checked the monitor, my husband and Rosalind were standing there. What could they want now? "Hello? What brings you here?" "We're forgiving you, so come back home, now!" Rosalind was still yelling, even through the monitor. Forgiving? For what? What have I ever done to Rosalind? "I'm sorry, but what exactly are you forgiving? I've done nothing that requires Rosalind's forgiveness." I said this to Rosalind and turned off the monitor. I was about to lose it with Rosalind, who had come uninvited and was talking down to me. But instead of leaving, they started pounding on the front door. "What are you doing, cutting me off? Come back home now!" Thinking it would be a nuisance to the neighbors if this continued, I opened the door and invited Rosalind and my husband inside. After seating them on the living room sofa, I asked what they were here for. "So, what's the reason for this sudden visit?" "I told you! Come back home!" This made no sense. They were the ones who told me to leave in the first place. "I'm sorry, but I left because Rosalind told me to. Why would I want to come back now?" I calmly retorted to Rosalind. "Besides, my husband doesn't seem to care that I left, so I have no intention of going back." "Don't be so childish. We're forgiving you, aren't we?" Forgiving. What have I done to Rosalind? I keep telling you, there's nothing to forgive. "I'm saying you can stay in my house, even if you're unemployed." "What? I'm not the one unemployed here. It's my husband. And if I go back, I'll just be bossed around every day." "True, I'm not working. But what about George?" "Huh? George has nothing to do with this." "No, he does. Don't you know, Rosalind? George is unemployed." Rosalind looked at me as if she didn't understand what I was saying. Apparently, my husband hadn't told her he'd been fired. Or rather, it's strange that Rosalind hadn't noticed. "Wait, George, is this true?" Rosalind asked my husband, who remained silent and didn't say anything. Frustrated, Rosalind couldn't hide her irritation. "Speak up! How will we know if you don't say anything?" Okay, I'll talk. I was actually fired from my job." Perhaps succumbing to Rosalind's pressure, my husband began to tell her he'd been fired. At first, Rosalind was shocked to hear he'd quit his job, but then she started showing signs of anger towards him as well. "Why did you keep this a secret? How are we supposed to live now?" "Well, I haven't found a job yet, but Anita has some income, so we'll manage, right?" He's not even seriously looking for a job, and now he's relying on my income. What a loser. I was completely done after hearing my husband's words. I was foolish to think, even for a moment, that I should support this guy. "So, you came here because you don't want to work and you're counting on me, right?" No, that's not it. That's a hit. He's clearly flustered. So why did you come now? From the day I went back to my parents' house until today, you haven't even sent a message, let alone called. I've been busy looking for a job. I didn't have time to contact you. What a terrible excuse. Even if he had been job hunting all day, he could have at least sent a message. I was too stunned to say anything. Well, George said so just come back home. Rosalind interrupted our conversation. Come back home? Who does she think she is? After all the terrible things she's done to me? Come back? You must be joking. After all the awful things you've done to me? Why would I? You're exaggerating. I was just thinking of your best interest. My best interest? Is throwing boiling water at me in my best interest? I couldn't hold back anymore and unleashed all my grievances on Rosalind. My husband, unaware that I had been scalded with boiling water, looked puzzled. Wait, Mom threw boiling water at Anita? Is this true? Yes, it's true. She suddenly threw it while I was cleaning. I was lucky not to get burned, but I feel like reporting her to the police right now. What the hell, Mom? Why would you do that? It's Anita's fault for ignoring what I say. My statement triggered a heated argument between my husband and Rosalind. What a noisy pair, barging into someone else's home. It's time for them to leave. If you want to argue, do it at home. If you're done here, please leave. As soon as I made it clear they should leave, their attitudes changed dramatically. Rosalind and my husband, who had been so aggressive, started begging me with almost tearful eyes. Please come back. We promise never to mistreat you again. Anita, I'm begging you. I'll definitely find a job. I guess they're really after my income. My husband probably thinks he can get by without working if he keeps me around. And Rosalind probably thinks she can relieve her daily stress by making my life miserable while also getting housework done. So you thought I'd say, yes, I understand? I'm never coming back. You both probably see me as just a convenient woman. That's not true! I promise I won't make life hard for you. My husband says this, but what should I believe now? He'll probably just laze around and not look for a job if I go back. Why hasn't he found a job yet? It's obvious he doesn't want to work. It seems I've hit the nail on the head. My husband had nothing more to say. Rosalind, same goes for you. Who would believe you won't mistreat me again? You'll probably go back to your old ways. Rosalind also fell silent. Their silence probably means they were thinking exactly that. I left the two of them in the living room and headed to my room. When I returned to the living room 5 minutes later, they were still sitting there, silent and looking down. How long do you plan to sit there? Anyway, could you sign this? I handed my husband the divorce papers, already filled out with my name. What is this? My husband was clearly confused, probably never expecting to hear the word divorce. Don't you get it? There are divorce papers. You said you'd find a job soon, but you never did. And you didn't even contact me when I went back to my parents' house. I'm done. Wait, this is too sudden. How self-centered can he be? It's his fault this is happening. My decision to divorce won't change, no matter what you say. Don't you think divorce is too harsh? Rosalind suddenly chimed in. I don't think it's harsh. It's not my fault, I said coldly to Rosalind. After all, she's partly to blame. I calmly thought about this. Fine, I get it, but don't regret this. My husband finally gave in and signed the divorce papers. There's no way I'll regret this. Actually, I feel relieved that the divorce is finalized. Alright, I'll file these divorce papers with the court. I don't need any alimony, so just leave. And so, my husband and I were officially divorced. I wondered if I had gone too far, but if I hadn't done this, Rosalind would continue to exploit me, and my husband would never seriously look for work. After kicking them out of my parents' home, I submitted the divorce papers to the court that same day. 2 weeks later, while relaxing at my parents' home, I received a call on my mobile phone from Rosalind. What could she possibly want? Hello? What is it? Wait a minute! The electricity and gas are both off? What did you do? Rosalind sounded frantic, but I hadn't done anything. I had just stopped paying for all the household expenses, which I had been covering until now. What do you mean? I haven't done anything. That can't be true. Everything was fine until now. Did you pay your bills? What? Rosalind was stunned. Does she not even understand that? You pay money for the services you use. Even a child understands that. What do you mean, what? Electricity and gas aren't free, you know? You probably got cut off for not paying your bills. Wait. That's a problem. Anita, could you cover it for us, just for this month? How much more can she underestimate people? Why should I pay when we're not even living together? Rosalind, have you lost your mind? George and I are no longer married, and we're not living together. Why should I pay for you? Well, we don't have any money. Then ask George. He promised to find a job and work, remember? But he hasn't found one yet. Can't you help us out as his ex-wife? I wish she'd stop making a fool out of people. It's pathetic that she's asking for help even from her ex-daughter-in-law. Understood. As I said that, Rosalind's tone clearly brightened. I'm glad you understand. So, you'll take care of the payment? I understand you very well, Rosalind. I won't have anything more to do with you guys. I don't want to be involved with people who conveniently used me, even after divorce. Goodbye. What are you saying? Rosalind seemed like she still had something to say, but I hung up the phone. Of course, I also made sure to block her number so she couldn't call back. I had been mistreated by Rosalind for so long, and I never thought my husband would turn out to be such a deadbeat. After cutting ties, I muttered, I hope they suffer, and moved on. A month passed. My ex-husband and Rosalind didn't bother me, and I was living peacefully. One day, while looking at stock charts, a message notification sounded on my mobile phone. I rarely get messages, so I thought it was probably spam. But when I opened it, it was from my ex-husband. I'm really sorry for everything. I've started working as a temporary worker in a factory and finally making some money. I know it's strange to ask now, but would you consider coming back? Life has been tough since you left. Mom has been hard on me. That was the gist of the message from my ex-husband. Come back? What is he talking about? I'm glad he's working, but there's no way I'm getting back together with him. It seems Rosalind hasn't changed. She's now targeting her own son. After all, Rosalind hasn't changed at all, and blocked my ex-husband without replying. 6 months after the divorce, I started dating a man introduced to me by a friend. He's 5 years younger than me, but very mature, and treats me well. Neither of us is thinking about marriage yet. But someday, we might. For now, I just want to cherish the happy times with him.
Lily is so lucky to have a beautiful mom. In my case, my daughter takes after my wife, which is super disappointing. Ugh. My husband never stops putting down our daughter Marie and me, his wife. He's praising his niece Lily as if she's the only cute one. The most disappointing person here is actually him. It seems like it's high time he understood that. My name is Mia. I'm a working mother in my late 40s. My daughter's name is Marie. She is a 12th grade student and is super busy with her studies every day. My husband Sam is also in his late 40s and works as a salaried employee. He seems to have a tough time in middle management, and he's always complains when he comes home from work. I'm willing to be lenient about him venting his work-related stress. If only it stopped there. Sam tends to take out his dissatisfaction on his family. Specifically, Sam says bad things directly to me and Marie. Complaining that my cooking is bad has become a routine. He says it every meal, even though he finishes everything on his plate. After meals, he complains that the house hasn't been cleaned. He runs his finger along window rails and says, "There's still dust, do it over." Are you a character from an old drama? In the end, you're just a disappointing wife, no matter what you do. He even complains about the way I polish the glasses. It's getting really tiresome. But it doesn't stop there. Sam also says terrible things to Marie. Despite her being his own daughter, he finds fault with everything. At her age, teens usually care about fashion, but if she changes her hairstyle even a little, he says it doesn't suit her. If she chooses a club activity, he says, "What? Such a pointless club." Even if she gets good grades on a test, he says, "What's with these grades? Try harder." He never praises her, only belittles her. Whenever Sam opens his mouth, family time turns into the worst time. Both Marie and I have had enough of Sam. One day we took advantage of a long weekend to visit the in-laws' house. Living in the in-laws' house are Sam's brother, Tom, and his family. We don't visit them very often. Tom is very kind and a really nice guy. His only daughter, Lily, is also in the 12th grade, like Marie, and she's a very good girl. Marie and Lily get along very well. However, there is also a problem in this house. Sister-in-law, which stands for Tom's wife, sister-in-law Lucy is so beautiful, you'd think she was a model. I find myself rudely wondering why she married Tom, who has an average face just like Sam. But she's strange. A little too strange, in fact. She makes comments that mock me. "Mia, you're not good at makeup, are you?" "Oh, maybe no amount of effort can help. People often say I look beautiful even without makeup." This is just the beginning. The most harmless level. "I lost weight again. I just can't gain weight no matter what I eat, Mia. You've become more robust, haven't you? What exactly are you eating to look like that?" "I was walking downtown and got asked if I wanted to be a madam model. It's such a hassle to say no to these kind words. I'm kind of jealous. Mia doesn't have to deal with that." "The other day when I was walking with Lily, people mistook us to be sisters. How embarrassing, Mia. At least you clearly look like a mom." She fires off these insults as naturally as breathing. I'll admit that Lucy is truly beautiful and has an incredible figure. Her stories are probably true as well. But is there really a need to put me down each time? Every time Tom says, "Why would you say something like that? It's rude," but she barely gets it. Lucy just smiles frivolously and says, "But it's true, you know." I guess I can just about tolerate the level of insult and let it slide with a laugh. However, sometimes a chemical reaction occurs. Mixing can be dangerous. That's when Sam's switch is flipped. "You're right. Lucy, my wife, really lacks charm." He dares to criticize others while he himself is already balding. Lucy's daughter has inherited her mother's good looks. She's in the 12th grade, like my daughter Marie, but she looks so mature and she could pass for a college student. She's fashionable and beautiful, and Marie loves her. Fortunately, while Lily may look like Lucy, she has Tom's personality. She doesn't look down on Marie or me, and is kind and a considerate girl. Being beautiful and having a good personality is the ultimate combo, isn't it? Marie always says, her eyes shining. She probably looks up to her favorite cousin. Thanks to that, Marie has also become more refined. She doesn't wear makeup yet, but she started to become more stylish within the boundaries of school rules. She probably spends about 30 minutes in front of the mirror every morning before school. At least that's gotten rid of her habit of oversleeping. I don't mind going to the in-laws' house, where the in-laws, John and Sophia, are also nice people, as well as Tom and Lily. It's just Lucy and Sam's attitudes that bother me. Neither Tom's words nor mine seem to get through to them. Is there a good way to change these two with bad mouths? As I pondered this, the visit to the in-laws' house this time came around. "Oh, Mia, you've aged again, haven't you? You have more wrinkles than me. If we walk together, people will think I'm the younger one." 3 minutes after opening the door to the in-laws' house, Lucy was already elevating herself while belittling me. This seems like it's going to be another depressing time. "Mia, are you taking good care of your skin? You must use a lot of moisturizer. When I go to the cosmetic section, the salespeople even say my skin looks youthful." Is it going to be like this again today? I'm getting really fed up with this, I thought, fuming, my attention towards my daughter and niece. Marie and Lily are both studying for their exams, so they've spread out their textbooks and are having a study session. They've just entered their senior year, and they probably won't be able to come to the in-laws' house much longer due to their busy study schedules. They'll likely pass on Thanksgiving and Christmas gatherings, so the next time they'll meet is probably after they've entered college. Knowing that, Marie decided to come along today. I peek into their notebooks without disturbing them too much, only to find a series of numbers that I can't understand. I was able to help out with their studies up until they were in elementary school, but the material they're working on in the 12th grade is beyond my comprehension. Did I really study stuff like this? What a different world, I pondered as I watched. It looks like Marie was teaching Lily. Marie was always good at math, I mused. Just then, Lily looked up at Marie with shining big eyes. Wow, Marie, you explained it so well. I've always struggled with math, but this is probably the first time I've really understood it. You're even better than the teacher. Marie seemed pleased to be praised by her beloved cousin. While blushing, Marie scratches her cheeks and says, "Oh, it's nothing really." However, not everyone is pleased by this. Lucy, who believes she is the best and that her daughter is second best, with everyone else below, decides to chime in. Let's see. Oh, of course, it figures that a plain girl would be good at plain studies. There's even someone nodding along to that statement. Sadly, it was my own husband, Sam. Yeah, Marie may not have the looks, but at least she can study. Well, there's nothing else you can do, is there? Exactly. Are Marie and Lily even related by blood? Well, Lily got her cuteness from me, so there's no way she'd be cute if she got it from your side of the family. That's enough. Just as Sam and Lucy start getting carried away, Tom makes his entrance. Though he's red in the face with anger, Sam and Lucy don't seem to care. To top it off, Sam slowly takes out his wallet. Next thing you know, he's handing $50 to Lily. Lily really is beauty. She's definitely winning at life. For a kid like that, Uncle's gotta give her some allowance. You're modest and have good character. Why don't you try putting some effort into looking nice instead of just studying? Though I doubt it'll do much, given your mom has always been the type to make pointless efforts. Hearing such cruel words from both her aunt and dad, tears slowly start to fill Marie's eyes. But Sam didn't care, and kept on praising Lily's cuteness. Lily is so lucky to have a beautiful mom like Lucy. Marie, on the other hand, is so unlucky to have a mom like Mia. Lily is super happy because she looks like Lucy. Marie is super unfortunate because she resembles Mia. What a difference, huh? Marie's eyes seem to be pleading, enough already. Marie's teary eyes send an SOS. But Sam continues to ignore it, and together with Lucy, they keep praising Lily and belittling Marie. Enough is enough! In that moment, a voice louder than I'd ever heard from myself erupted. I'd reached my limit seeing Marie's tears. I silently took Marie's hand and walked out of my in-laws' house. I'm so mad. I'm so mad. I can't even. I'll never forgive him. Usually we'd stay overnight at my in-laws' house, but of course, that wasn't going to happen this time. As soon as we got back home, we received back-to-back calls from my mother-in-law, Sophia, and Tom. Both of them kept apologizing profusely, and it's not like John and Sophia or Tom are to blame. I could see that John and Sophia, while finding it difficult to speak directly to their daughter-in-law, Lucy, were saying something to their actual son, Sam. They were probably scolding him. Still, Sam just laughed it off. As for Lucy, she's infuriating too, but I think that's for Tom to handle. Sam, however, is another story. He didn't come after us when we went back home. He actually stayed the night at my in-laws' house. Marie and I discussed it and then made a decision. The night after the incident at the in-laws' house, Sam finally came home. I'm back! That's how carelessly he entered the house. Naturally, I didn't greet him back. All I gave him was silence. I expected it, but Sam just laughed it off. With that smile still on his face, he peered into the living room and looked around. Is Marie in her room? Marie isn't here. As I answered, Sam looked at the clock and his face turned grim. She's not back yet? It's already 10 at night. Even if she's at cram school, that's too late. In response to Sam's words, I exaggeratedly let out a big sigh and got up from the sofa. As I headed toward the fridge, I casually said to Sam, "She's not here anymore," before opening the fridge. "What?" Sam tilted his head, unable to comprehend what I'd just said. I noticed this out of the corner of my eye as I popped open a can of beer. The satisfying sound reverberated in the room. "What do you mean she's not here? Did she stay over at a friend's house or something?" "I mean exactly what I said. She's not in this house anymore." What? I don't get it." "She said she doesn't need a terrible dad like you, so she left." "Wait, what? Left to where?" "How should I know?" "How can you be so calm? Are you even a mom?" "Unfortunately, yes." "Come on, that was a joke. Who would take it seriously?" "A joke, you say?" Unable to hold back, I slammed the can into the sink. A dull sound echoed. I glared sharply at Sam. "A joke is something that makes everyone laugh." What? You're actually angry?" "Your joke wasn't funny at all. The only people laughing were you and Lucy. No one else was laughing. How was that a joke?" "Well, that's because you're all too stubborn." "What kind of joke makes your own daughter cry?" "I thought maybe it would motivate her or something." "There's no child in the world who would be motivated by that." But... Shut up. No but about it. What you've done is more than enough for Marie to abandon you." "Abandon? Marie's going to abandon me?" "That's why she ran away." What the hell? Does he really not understand what an irreversible mistake he's made unless I spell it out like this? How low quality can he be? With a pale face, Sam grabbed my arm. I coldly shook him off. What should I do?" "How should I know? Do you think she'd forgive me if I apologize?" "This is the result of what you've been doing to Marie for over a decade. Don't think it's going to be that easy to fix." He probably has a lot to reflect on from what I just said. Sam was at a loss for words, and then, "I'll go look for her." With that, he dashed out of the house. So he does care that Marie is gone after all. That's disappointing, especially after how much he said it wouldn't matter. But it's too late now. I watched Sam leave, then went back to the room to grab my bag. It was packed as though I was going on a trip. I had already sent the bulk of it via courier earlier in the day. I only kept what seemed immediately necessary, but it was still a substantial amount. I picked up my bag and left the house. Making sure Sam was nowhere in sight, I stepped out onto the main street and hailed a taxi. As for where I'm headed... What's going on? Where are your bags gone to? This is the first thing I heard when Sam called me. His voice was so loud that even holding the phone away from my ear didn't help. Ignoring what he had to say, I put the phone back to my ear and spoke. "Well, of course they're gone. I took them with me." "Took them? Where the hell are you?" His voice is so loud that I pulled the phone away from my ear again. Deciding I've had enough, I put the call on speaker. I place the phone on the table, take a sip of my coffee, and then speak. "I don't think I need to tell you where. Anyway, I'm running away from home too, so good luck living on your own." What? Are you kidding me? You think you can get away with this? You should be happy your troublesome wife is gone. Ugh, you're so persistent. I told you it was a joke. Can you believe he's still calling it a joke? Just as I'm about to raise my voice at the unrepentant Sam, that's when it happens. Dad's jokes are never funny. There's no way something that hurts your daughter could ever be funny. Our daughter Marie yells from beside me. The one who is shocked is Sam. "Marie, are you with her?" He shouts in a flustered voice. "Of course I am. Mom and I are at Grandma and Grandpa's house."
Grandparents? Wait, you mean Mia's parents' place? Yes, exactly.
Marie and I are at my parents' house in the next town over. "All right, I get it. I'm coming to pick you up. Let's talk this over, okay?" With that, Sam hangs up the phone. I wonder if he's really prepared for this conversation. With that thought, I look over my shoulder. About 10 minutes later, Sam arrives by car, and then he's speechless. Why is everyone here? It's not surprising that Sam is shocked. After all, not only are my parents at my family home, but also my in-laws, John and Sophia, Tom, and even my niece Lily and her mother Lucy. It's a gathering of people who would hardly ever come together, except for rites of passage. Faced with this, Sam is at a loss for words. I smile at Sam and say, "Well, sit down here," pointing to the floor. The circle is formed by me, my parents, Tom, John, and Sophia, and then Mary and Lily. Here? Yes, right there. Faced with my compelling smile, Sam takes a seat with a strained expression. By the way, Lucy is sitting outside of the circle, all by herself. All right, then, anything you'd like to say? I've done nothing wrong. Is this the mouth that still makes jokes? As I pinch his cheek, he screams, ouch! Rubbing his now red cheek, Sam speaks, because it was a joke! And this is the mouth that still makes jokes? Ouch, ouch, ouch! Seeing Sam's overly frivolous attitude, I became angry, and then my parents took over. Sam, what do you think a family is? Aren't you supposed to protect your family as it is a central figure? That's what I've been doing. So belittling your daughter and wife is your way of protecting them? Do you even cherish Marie to begin with? Absolutely, with overflowing love. So belittling her every day and comparing her to other children is your idea of overflowing love? Sam loses his words under my dad's glare. Then John and Sophia speak. Really, what a foolish son. What? Sam is surprised by the harsh words from his actual parents. John and Sophia don't stop there. I can only think that we raised you wrong. How could you turn out to be such a fool? But Sophia, Tom turned out to be a fine man. Maybe we should consider that it's Sam's character that's the problem here. You're right, John. The child has always had a tendency to look down on people. We've warned him countless times and even gave him advice, but he never listens. Really, he's such a disappointment. Wait, isn't that going a bit too far? And where do you get off saying your wife and daughter are disappointing? What about you? Is not disappointing? Ah! You can't even imagine how awful it feels to be on the receiving end of such comments. You really are a disappointing child. So disappointing. I'm sorry. The one you should be apologizing to isn't us. Yes, Mia, it was my fault. I'm sorry. Finally, words of apology fly out from Sam, who deeply apologizes to me and our daughter. Not that I plan to forgive him. I will never forgive him for what he said to Marie. I glance sideways at Marie, who has a perfectly expressionless face. She seems completely unmoved by her father's apology, and I can't help but give a wry smile. It must have gotten through to Sam. Marie, Dad was wrong too. Dad was too? What do you mean? Finally, Marie speaks, her voice low. Sam's face turns pale. What? So Dad also thinks I'm at fault? That ultimately it's all because I'm a disappointment? So Dad, you prefer Lily and Aunt over me and Mom, right? No, that's not it. We're just a disappointing wife and daughter, aren't we? I also find it disappointing to have someone like you as my dad. I don't need a disappointing dad anymore. It's a nuisance if you like Lily and Aunt so much, you should go live with them. What? No, that's a bit much. Sam is flustered. Then his niece Lily speaks. Even I don't want to live with such a disappointing uncle. What? Sam is shocked by the unexpected remark from Lily, but Lily doesn't stop. Saying awful things about your own wife and daughter while doting on your niece? You're the one who's disappointing for thinking your family is a letdown. I'm sorry. I don't need such a pathetic apology. I hate both Mom and you, Uncle. I don't even want to see your faces. Lily's words catch everyone by surprise, and Lucy lifts her face in shock. Lily, you hate Mom too? Mom, you also kept making excuses whenever Dad warned you. You don't think you're wrong at all, do you? Both of you. Mom and Uncle are the worst for talking bad about others. Do you think you're such a good people that you have the right to criticize? You're just spiritually impoverished. If you ask me, both of you are just pathetic and awful human beings. Lucy is extremely disheartened by these words. And Sam also droops his shoulders when Marie says, I also hate Dad. So, in conclusion, I spoke to wrap things up. Marie and I will continue living at my parents' house. It seems we don't need to transfer schools and we can commute by bus. The university we aim for is closer to my parents' house, so there's no issue. So you're not coming back until university? It's not just until university. Are you saying we're getting a divorce? Well, that depends on your actions from now on. In other words, Sam had not anticipated being abandoned by his family. He was extremely dejected. Afterwards, it seems that Tom had a stern talking with Lucy. Her actions until now had finally caused his anger to explode, and they decided to live apart, meaning Lucy was expelled from her in-laws' house. Since Lucy's biological parents have already passed away, she has nowhere to go and must live on her own from now on. It seems that Lucy is quite shocked, but I doubt people like her will ever change. A divorce is likely in the cards. My niece Lily seems quite pleased that her mother Lucy is leaving. And as for Lily, she said to my daughter Marie with a smile, "Let's continue to get along," and they hugged each other. As for Sam, he sent apology calls and messages for a while, but stopped after I told him it was annoying. Even though he never listened before, it's too late to think that just listening now will make things forgivable. He's been making regular payments for living expenses and child support, so we'll see if he shows any sincerity going forward. That said, it's questionable whether he'll be able to attend Marie's wedding ceremony. As for Marie, she's been freed from a dad who only had harsh words for her and is enjoying truly happy days. The increase in her smiles makes me happy too. I've also started working and am leading a fulfilling life. At this rate, it looks like we won't even need living expenses from Sam. I quietly smile as I ponder what this all means.
Please stop! Don't come in! I said that, trying to stop them, but they retorted, "Do you even know the phrase live within your means? It's such a waste for just two people to live here. From today, we'll live here. If you don't want to live with us, then you should leave. Oh, but you'll still be paying, of course. We're going through a tough time right now. Families need to help each other out, right?" I looked at my mother-in-law with utter contempt as she patted my shoulder. My name is Selina. I'm 28. I've always loved studying and learning new things. I got into a prestigious local high school and was enjoying a happy life. In my third year of middle school, during winter, a car slipped on the snow and I lost both my parents in the accident. After my parents' funeral, I was overwhelmed with things I didn't understand. I had to get help with various procedures, and there wasn't much insurance money left. With no relatives, I was advised to go to a facility, but I learned I could only stay there for about 3 years, so I looked for a job with accommodation. Jobs that allowed dropouts to work and live in were limited. Yet, I found a few, and was hired to work at a live-in hotel. The first thing I learned was how to wear a dress on my own. My seniors and the manager were strict, yet kind to the clueless me. The president's daughter became fond of me, and we spent time like a family. After 10 years, I had become competent at my job and saved a good amount of money. I had a dream. I worked hard to make it come true. The manager praised my coffee-making skills, and I was assigned to serve coffee at the hotel's annual coffee enjoyment event. Our hotel's area was famous for coffee, so this event was held as a part of community contribution involving local coffee farmers and specialty shops. I met my future husband, Alec, at the hotel event, where I made him coffee during a tense moment in the corner designated for deciding the hotel's suppliers. Alec was the son and heir to a long-established coffee shop and was attending this event for the first time. I was drawn to his gentle manner and soft speech. After dating for a year, we decided to get married. But it wasn't smooth sailing. I had thought it was possible to face outright opposition. It was frustrating, but I thought it was inevitable. Given my background, I had also considered that I might be opposed by the traditional coffee shop. Sadly, the reality was more sinister than I imagined. "The dropout look? So unimpressive," were the first words from my sister-in-law when she opened the door. I was so startled that I dropped my bag and my neatly arranged shoes got slightly disheveled.
"Hey, what are you saying, sis?"
Alec retorted, but this was just the beginning. "So, you're a dropout and you have no parents, huh?" Their words lacked any trace of sympathy or comfort, just a cold, mocking tone.
"Our family doesn't mean to boast, but everyone's graduated from respectable universities. We don't want dropout blood in our family."
I looked at Alec, but he seemed to have nothing to say. "You probably don't know how to cook or do laundry properly without parents, right? We sometimes wear dresses. Our kids can handle it, but for a dropout like you..."
Our family might be too much to handle.
I could hear my sister-in-law's mocking laugh from the sofa behind me. After a barrage of insults, and when the room finally quieted down, Alex spoke up before I could retort.
Dad, Mom, please stop. Sure, she's a dropout and not stunningly beautiful, but she works at a hotel, knows about kimonos, and can cook and do household chores well enough for her age. I've already explained which hotel she works at. The president of the hotel likes her, and she's necessary for our future family business. I told you all this.
He said this while holding my hand, quietly reassuring me. At that moment, I felt something was off. It sounded like he was marrying me because I was favored by the hotel president. But after their hurtful words, I was numb and somehow deluded into thinking that with Alex's help, we could make it through together. I wanted to get married only with proper approval. But Alex suggested getting the hotel president, who was like a parent to him, to talk to his family. His parents seemed to buckle under the influence of powerful people. After the president made the call, they quickly agreed to the marriage, surprising me with their rapid change of attitude. At that time, my best friend, Troyan, expressed concern.
Are you sure about this marriage? I know how hard you've worked. I think of you as a sister, and I want you to be happy.
Troyan had always been close to me, and she was the same age as my husband-to-be, Alec. The Alec I talked about and the Alec Troyan knew didn't seem to match up, and she always worried if I was being deceived. For a while after getting married, Alec and I lived happily together. He enjoyed my cooking, and we shared warm moments, gratefully acknowledging each other. I thought Troyan's worries were unnecessary. I continued working at the hotel, and the family coffee shop was just a casual helping hand for me, leading a happy life. At that time, my mother-in-law, Alexandra, fell down the stairs and broke a bone. Since the incident during our initial greeting, I had been avoiding contact with my in-laws as much as possible. With my sister-in-law also living there, I didn't take the situation too seriously. But then, Alex said something unbelievable.
Mom broke her bone, right? It's a good opportunity, so we've decided to move in with them.
He said this abruptly one day when he returned from work. There had never been any talk of this before. I'm troubled by this sudden decision. We have to renew our apartment lease, and I have my job. Plus, your sister is living there. I could help out, but commuting... As I was trying to suggest alternatives in my confused state, a loud noise suddenly made me freeze. It was the sound of Alex slamming his hand on the table.
What? I'm the eldest son, aren't I? Do you plan to leave everything to others?
This Alec, so different from the gentle and calm one I knew, left me completely stunned. But that's not...
It's exactly that. You're an orphan who I took in, and our marriage was opposed. Don't you think you should work a bit and be useful? It's not just about pleasing them, but as a dropout, maybe you can't think that far, huh?
I couldn't say anything to Alec, who was giving off a completely different aura, like a delinquent. I must have been trembling when Alec hugged me gently as usual. Normally, this would be a moment of happiness, but I only felt fear then.
Sorry for being harsh, Selina. You're a bit silly, so I got irritated. It's your fault, you know. But I'll be fine if you listen to me, right? There might be some anxiety, so let's just do this until Mom recovers.
As Alex spoke to me gently, as if making a concession, I began to feel gradually devoured by the situation. So, I started to go there to take care of her a bit. I thought it might ease the relationship since I would be in a position to be thanked. And while working, I managed to get all the packing and administrative work done by the end of the month and moved in. The day we moved into my in-laws' house, Alexandra called me to her room.
and her words were enough to break my spirit. Don't think by taking care of me, you'll be thanked and your status will change. You're a disgraceful dropout daughter-in-law, the lowest in this house, so naturally you'll bathe last. I stood frozen, sweating coldly, barely able to breathe. Breathing became increasingly difficult with each day I spent in that house. At work, I was normal, but at home, I struggled to breathe, feeling suffocated. Gradually, I couldn't smile anymore, and my mistakes at work increased. Troyan was worried, but I could only say I was fine, feeling guilty for insisting on the marriage despite her concerns. The stress led to sleepless nights and deteriorating health, so I resigned from my job, citing the need to take care for Alexandra, not wanting to be a burden. I should have said proper goodbyes, but I lacked the energy to even leave the house. And so began my days of handling household chores while being berated. How many times do I have to tell you? The food is too salty. Are you trying to make us sick? You can't even cook properly. I thought it was tasty, but my taste must have adapted. Selina is lucky to learn cooking from Mom. The cleaning is always somewhat lacking. Was marrying a hotel staff meaningless? Alex's verbal abuse worsened over time, and the kind words from him were no more. The supposed temporary living arrangement showed no sign of ending. Alexandra was still energetically attending her hula dancing hobby. Alex said he felt suffocated with me, becoming more gloomy and dark, and started staying out drinking. One day, "I won't be coming home tonight," she said, dressed up more than usual, with flashy makeup. My sister-in-law was almost 31. She seemed busy with her matchmaking efforts, always sneering at my marriage, but recently she had been in a good mood, probably meeting someone nice, so her taunts decreased. With them not returning home, I bathed earlier than usual. Alec didn't come back, and my sister-in-law was also not around. The water was cleaner than when I usually bathed last. Suddenly, the bathroom door opened, and I turned around in shock to see my sister-in-law standing there. I immediately realized her date must have gone terribly wrong. "Get out! You're so slow!" After being pulled out of the bathtub, I was pushed naked outside the bathroom and had my clothes thrown at me. My father-in-law, Roy, was also in the house. I realized it was bad, but it was already too late. He had quietly stood behind me, watching the commotion. After looking me over, Roy said, "I thought it was a good scene, but seeing my son's wife, so thin and unappealing, I can't feel anything. No wonder Alec doesn't want to be home." I ran to my room, overwhelmed with embarrassment and frustration. Looking in the mirror, I didn't recognize myself for a moment. The busy life and stress had left me barely eating recently. I knew that, but the reflection showed a skeletal, disheveled, expressionless person. Staring at my reflection, I cried for the first time since coming to this house, maybe for an hour, until Alec came back. "Wow, I thought you were a ghost," he said, laughing. I told him about what had happened. "Seriously? That's hilarious. Even Dad made fun of you." He laughed it off. That was the moment something snapped inside me. Why was I putting up with them? What were these years for? As I watched my husband laughing, I swore to myself that I would have my revenge. Then, Troyan called at just the right time. Since I hadn't been out recently, I found that all my pants were too big due to weight loss, so I chose a dress Alec had given me. Troyan burst into tears and hugged me the moment she saw me. "I should have visited you even if you didn't want me to come." She comforted me with kind words. Troyan had booked a private room for an important conversation. What she told me was shocking, but to me, who had sworn revenge, it was like gaining a weapon. I shared everything with Troyan, the recent events, and what I wanted to do next. Troyan listened tearfully and said, "I'll help you in every way. There are many others who can help you too. We'll get your happiness back." She showed her mischievous side from our younger days. I laughed, realizing it was the first genuine smile in who knows how long, and I cried again from the happiness of being able to smile. Back home, I did the usual housework. Alexandra criticized me as usual, but it didn't affect me anymore. I told Alec I needed to talk to him when he returned home. He seemed annoyed, but I confronted him with photos. Clearly shaken, he started talking nonstop. "I just played around with someone I met while out with friends. You're a dropout, clumsy, older, and can't even manage the house or smile. It was hard being home." It was astonishing how smoothly he blamed it all on me. "So it's all my fault then?" "Yes, exactly. That's why I had no choice." He seemed relieved by my response. "All right, then let's get divorced. I'll have to tell the president, who's been like a parent to us, and apologize. He was our matchmaker after all. Make sure you pay alimony and we'll divide the assets. And I'll also get compensation from your affair partner." He looked at me as if I were a different creature and said, "Acting all high and mighty now," and struck me. Realizing he had gone too far, Alec panicked. "I recorded that. Look, I've reached my limit too. If you don't want a divorce, at least let's end the cohabitation. I'll leave by this Saturday." The coffee shop business, worried about me, had been expanded by the president, with most profits coming from hotel-related transactions. So, Alec had no escape. I had already packed my things to avoid interference with moving out. On the day, I made Alec inform his family that I was leaving. They all sat for breakfast as usual, asking, "Where's breakfast?" Seeing the three of them, I couldn't help but laugh. "I wanted to end the cohabitation. Breakfast was there because Selina made it. We should have been more grateful." They all started hurling insults, but Alex slammed the table and shouted, "Anyway, I want to separate. If we don't, it'll be a big problem. Everyone take care of yourselves. Selina, let's go." He pulled my hand, and for a moment, I wished he had taken my hand like this sooner. I shook off Alex's hand and said, "We won't be seeing each other again. The useless woman you speak of will be gone. Goodbye." I walked ahead of Alec. We stayed at a hotel for a while. A few days later, Alec didn't return to the hotel. After waiting a day, I checked the company's bank account and found that Alec had withdrawn everything and fled. Seeing the account at zero, my hands trembled with the shock. Months later, I had returned to work at the hotel. I had saved money for my dream without spending any of it. With that money, I bought a small house, the one I noticed the day I reconnected with Troyan. It reminded me of the house where I lived with my family as a child. I wanted to start anew here. The day after Alec left, I called the management company, and within weeks, I successfully purchased the house. One day in the garden, I heard a familiar voice. "Selina, good to see you're doing well." It was my former in-laws, all three of them. "Why are you here?" I asked coldly. They seemed taken aback, but their arrogant attitude remained. "What a nice house. We came to see it after hearing you built a house. We went to the shop, but it was closed. Where's Alec?" They barged in through the front door. "Please stop! Don't come in!" "But don't you know the phrase, live within your means?" It's such a waste for just one person to live here. We'll live here from today. If you don't want to live with us, then you should leave. Oh, but you're paying, of course. You used to be poor, so you can live anywhere, right? We're going through a tough time right now. Families need to help each other out, right? I looked at Alexandra with contempt. Ugh, these people don't understand what they are doing. They continue to enter despite my refusal and attempt to stop them. But they won't get their way, not even by a millimeter. Yes, ex-family. I wanted to help, but just then, the melody of doom reached our ears from afar. The sound of a police car. I've just called the police. What are you doing entering someone's house uninvited? Selina might get hurt. Come here. Who are these people? Troyan was the one shouting from her grand staircase. Yes, this house belonged to Troyan. It was true that I bought a new house nearby, but today I was visiting Troyan's. Amidst the sirens, my ex-in-laws seemed unable to grasp the situation. What do you mean ex-family? I divorced Alec. Didn't you know? And about the coffee shop you were so proud of? Alec ran off with all its money, causing it to go under. Didn't you know any of this? It's a shame you came all this way. Maybe it's too much for you to understand, even with your college degrees. I said with a laugh, and my ex-in-laws looked at me in shock. Behind me, Troyan continued her convincing act. What? The family of Selina's ex-husband? You followed her here? That's scary. She made a commotion as the police arrived. They're stalking this girl and entered our house uninvited. Troyan shouted loudly in a room with open windows, attracting neighbors' attention. Their family, being old merchants in the area, were well known. Isn't that the son of the coffee shop family? An old man's comment turned everyone's gaze to Roy. Confused, the three were pushed into a police car and taken away. The police might need to question me again, I thought, watching the police car with my ex-in-laws disappear into the distance. That night, Troyan and I drank till morning, celebrating. It had almost gone according to plan. I had anticipated their family might come someday. Since reuniting with Troyan, we had been planning. First, to leave the in-laws' house peacefully and get Alec to sign the divorce papers. I didn't want any complications. I told Alec that if we didn't separate on a specified day, I'd file for divorce. I made him write the divorce papers, then tore up a fake copy in front of him. I had intentionally left a noticeable amount in one of the company accounts, transferring the rest to mine. Though I said I didn't want his money, Troyan insisted I should take it. In a way, his sloppiness helped the plan. The woman Alec was involved with turned out to be Troyan's friend. She thought Alec was single and even talked about marriage with him. I didn't demand alimony for Alec's affair, but I encouraged Troyan's friend who had been deceived to claim it. Alec, shocked by the amount, fled. Interestingly, that friend turned out to be the daughter of the president of the company where my ex-sister-in-law worked. In a relatively large town, it seems everyone is connected somehow, a typical small-town phenomena. While my ex-sister-in-law didn't know she was Alec's affair partner, suspicion fell on her too. An investigation revealed her coercive dinner invitations to male employees and power harassment, leading to her being pressured to resign voluntarily. Roy, having received part of the coffee shop's profit as a nominal manager, also came here likely because the transfers from Alec ceased. Later, the three were released after spending about 2 days in detention for their mistaken home invasion, as it was their first offense and there were no injuries. However, unable to maintain their large family home, they now reportedly live in a small, run-down apartment, arguing constantly. Despite their high education,
it's hard for 65-year-old ex-father-in-law, 60-year-old ex-mother-in-law with little work experience, and ex-sister-in-law, effectively fired for harassment, to find significant employment. Their past arrogance left them without anyone willing to help. Alec, hunted by the angry president, deceived by his daughter, was reportedly found and put to work on a fishing boat to repay the alimony. As for me, I'm enjoying life in my small house. No more suffocating moments. I don't plan to marry anytime soon. I want to spend peaceful days with my caring best friend Troyan, who still visits me, enjoying our time together in this house. The bitter and hateful times are over, replaced by a refreshing breeze. Come to visit! I naturally turned towards the voice and smiled. My dream was to create a place where a family could be happy. Now, I'm looking forward confidently, determined to live without forgetting to smile again.
I'll try to make this strange story happen again. If it's something good, you're welcome anytime, but I absolutely can't forgive someone trying to bring about unfortunate events. My name is Ruby. I live in a certain regional city known for its idyllic landscapes, a comfortable place to live. My family consists of my parents and my brother Thomas, kind parents and an excellent brother. Dad, who always wanted a girl, doted on me. Dad, being a worrier, interfered in this and that, and during my teenage years, I often rebelled against him. But now, I think that was his way of showing love. Speaking of which, I'm already in my late 30s. Ironically, what made me realize how much I loved Dad was when I lost him to illness. At 25, I had never imagined saying goodbye to Dad so soon. At Dad's funeral, my handkerchief was soaked with tears that kept flowing, the weight of it somehow making me feel even sadder. Thomas had married a woman he'd been dating since his student days when he was 22, and had a son the following year. Both Dad and Mom were overjoyed with their first grandchild, doting on my nephew Spencer. Spencer was close to Dad, a real grandpa's boy, but lost his beloved grandpa and clenched his fist throughout the funeral, a memory that strongly stays with me. Seeing him grieving for Dad, I felt a selfish sense of comfort. 9 years later, I met a man by chance and got married. So, you're finally getting married. I was worried you might stay single forever. I think Kendrick would be happy for you too, from wherever he is. I'm glad you're getting married before becoming an older lady, Ruby. Spencer, now 15, cheekily said. Hey, don't be rude. But really, congratulations, Ruby. I wish you happiness. I got along with my sister-in-law Sophia, as if we were real sisters, and her congratulatory words meant a lot to me. Thus, I married amid warm blessings, though my family joked it was about time. I never doubted that my family, Mom, Thomas's family, and us as a couple, would continue to interact happily. But soon, a terrible thing happened. An unexpected misfortune in the midst of ordinary life, something no one thinks about daily. It became real with a phone call from Thomas. Sophia passed away about 30 minutes ago. She looked peaceful. Shocked by the news of Sophia's death, I initially thought it might be a belated April Fool's joke, given it was April, but that was impossible. I hadn't seen Sophie directly since the wedding, nor had we been in touch by phone recently, so I was unaware that she had been hospitalized. Sure, I was busy with my new life. Mom and Thomas, trying not to worry me unnecessarily, respected Sophia's wishes and didn't inform me about her condition. While I understood Sophia and Thomas's consideration, it was natural to feel resentful for not being informed. I loved Sophia and wanted to be by her side, to help her in any way, and I blamed Thomas for keeping me in the dark. The illness progressed rapidly, weakening her day by day. She didn't want you to see her like that, he explained. Sophia remembered how distraught I was at Dad's funeral and wanted to spare me that deep grief by keeping her condition hidden. Like with Dad, I never imagined Sophia's situation would take such a turn. People unconsciously avoid thinking about misfortunes to live each day to the fullest. While the possibility of misfortune is always there for anyone, living in fear makes normal life impossible. And when misfortune becomes a reality, people are initially shocked, shaken, and plunged into grief. Though Sophia is gone, those of us who remain must continue our daily lives. Thomas threw himself into his work. Spencer, initially in a daze without Mom, has now shifted his focus to studying for the future. Thomas's work is our family business. Our family owns a bourbon whiskey distillery that has been operational since 1865, producing a renowned spirit that represents our region. After Dad's death, Mom took over as the company's head, with Thomas assisting her as the future successor. After graduating from college, I joined Dad's company, mainly handling administrative duties. Our distillery, steeped in tradition and established working methods, has been exploring changes in employment practices to keep up with the times, leading to a busy period with many decisions to be made. After all, it's a distillery with a legacy dating back to 1865. There are numerous traditions, work mechanisms, artifacts, and legends to uphold. Since childhood, I've been fascinated by my family's history and past events. I enjoyed listening to Dad, then living Grandpa and Grandma, and longtime employees, researching to satisfy my curiosity. Our property houses 2 large warehouses, storing heirlooms passed down through generations. In middle school, my interest centered on these warehouses, immersing myself in exploring their contents, starting with cleaning the dusty interiors, a task so laborious I often thought of quitting. It took nearly half a year to finish just one warehouse. It wasn't until high school that I could begin my real investigation. Despite wanting to start sooner, my nature to complete tasks thoroughly, much to my parents' amazement, kept me focused on cleaning. The items in the warehouse stirred my curiosity. There were plenty of documents, well preserved, with the writing as clear as if it were from the time it was written. However, the script was deteriorated, making it difficult to read. The older they were, the more indecipherable they became, driving me to want to decipher them. As a result, I majored in history in the literature department at university, learning to decode old documents. Dad, half amazed, supported my determination to read the warehouse documents, encouraging my studies. Thomas, then a senior in college and planning to join the family business, cheered me on, curious about our family history. With my family's support, I dedicated myself to studying at university to satisfy my curiosity. Before graduating, I managed to review most of the stored documents, glimpsing into our family's history and roots. I selected major topics and compiled them into a book, which I self-published. Holding the book now brings back vivid memories of my excitement and discoveries at that time. 2 years after Sophia's passing, another surprising piece of news came. This time, it wasn't sad news about someone's death, but rather a joyous one. Yet, it left me confused. It was about Thomas getting remarried. Since getting married, I left my family's company and have been working as a curator at a local museum, a role I was invited to take on earlier. It's a fulfilling job where I can utilize the document deciphering skills I learned during my student days. Though I no longer saw Thomas at the company, living close to our childhood home, I frequently visited Mom. While I didn't see Thomas often, we weren't completely out of touch, but I had no idea he had found someone. Visiting home with my husband Hilbert, Thomas shared more details. His fiancée was the daughter of a business associate. Thomas, now 40, was marrying a woman 12 years his junior, a 28-year-old lady. I'm 8 years older, so it feels strange to have a younger sister-in-law. Thomas looks young for his age, and though I'm his sister and might be biased, he's quite handsome. But I wondered about his decision to marry again, especially with a 17-year-old high school student in the midst of adolescence and preparing for college entrance exams. I was curious about what kind of person his fiancée was. After Sophia's death, Thomas had thrown himself into work to forget his pain, but work alone couldn't fill the void in his heart. During that time, he met a woman named Marigold, who worked for a company designing labels for whiskey bottles. Thomas, who found her vaguely reminiscent of the late Sophia, kept her in his mind as an intriguing figure. He hadn't considered dating or remarrying until Marigold's proactive approach gradually changed his heart. Hearing that Marigold, not Thomas, was the initiator, I felt a bit uneasy. My common sense or judgment criteria couldn't understand how she could actively pursue a man 12 years her senior, whom I saw as an old man. I knew people's preferences are diverse, and there's no right or wrong in them, so I kept my thoughts from Thomas and Mom. When I asked Spencer what he thought about having a new mom, he said, "It's Dad's life. He should do what he wants. For me, my mom is the one who passed away. If she becomes my mom legally, then it can't be helped." His answers seemed detached, or rather mature. Marigold, whom I met for the first time at a family meeting, was very beautiful, and indeed had an air about her similar to the late Sophia. While I couldn't yet tell if she was like Sophia inside, she must be wonderful since Thomas chose to marry her. Marigold's father, the president of a printing company we did business with, seemed pleased with his daughter's marriage to the heir of a prestigious distillery. "As a parent, my daughter's happiness is paramount. Marrying Thomas, the future head of the company, is reassuring. We look forward to continued business relations as family." Marrying into a well-known family in this region certainly carries advantages for a businessman. While it's a fact, I couldn't help but feel uneasy about Marigold's father's words, sensing a desire for more profit. During this time, Marigold just smiled and didn't speak much. After marrying, Thomas and Marigold started living with Mom at our family home. I thought they were getting along well with Mom, but about 6 months later, I ran into Spencer in town and asked about the situation at a cafe. "Dad says she reminds him of Mom, but she's nothing like her," Spencer told me. According to him, Marigold hardly does any housework, leaving it all to Mom instead. It's more like she's forcing it onto Mom rather than taking it on willingly. Her attitude towards Mom is terrible, not at all like someone living as a daughter-in-law should, treating Spencer as if he's in the way. To Thomas, she acts sweet and dependent, but it seems her aim is just to get money from him. She stopped working after marrying and became a homemaker, but hasn't been able to curb her luxurious spending habits from before the marriage. I had been keeping my distance from the newlyweds, not wanting to intrude too much, so I had no idea about these developments. "I plan to go to college in the city and leave that house as soon as I can, but I'm worried about Grandma and Dad," Spencer said. I couldn't stop thinking about what Spencer had told me. What was Marigold's true nature? About a half-month later, I bumped into Marigold in town. Marigold asked to speak with me, so we went to a nearby family restaurant. I had a lot of questions myself. For the past half-month, I had been preoccupied with what Spencer told me, and I couldn't stop thinking about it. I was nervous, but I decided to take this opportunity to ask her directly. "Are you really treating Spencer as an inconvenience?" I asked. "Well, a high school boy can hardly be considered cute, right? He's just in the way of mine and his father's life. I'm eagerly waiting for him to leave for university," she replied without any remorse. Her candid response to my question took me by surprise. "Why do they say Mom is doing all the housework by herself? Why don't you do anything?" "Well, Samantha is still fit and healthy, isn't she? If she's healthy, she might as well work. What's the problem with being healthy?" she responded. "Mom may be healthy, but she's getting on in years and should be allowed to relax," I said. But Marigold, without changing her expression, replied, "Soon enough, she'll pass on, and then our family can really take over the company's management. Being the chairperson, she's just a nuisance, you know?" How can you say things like pass on easily, or she's a nuisance? You're the one not working and just leeching money off Thomas. I retorted angrily, wishing I could reprimand her more harshly. "That's fine. He married a young and beautiful woman like myself. It's necessary for him to invest in me. I'm an expensive woman to maintain," Marigold proudly declared, revealing her ugly true nature. I was almost surprised she wasn't trying to hide it. Then she brought up something unbelievable. "By the way, that book you wrote, the one about the documents in our warehouse, is quite interesting. Some of the stories are quite horrific." The documents I decoded covered various aspects of our family's history. Among them was a strange story that Marigold referred to as horrific. Our bourbon whiskey distillery, established in 1865, was appointed by the nobility to produce a special brew. In return, a condition was set: to marry a woman recommended by the nobleman. Rumor had it that these women were the nobleman's playthings, sent to our family as a way to get rid of them. One such woman brought a beautiful purple fabric with her as a part of her bridal trousseau. The purple with red lines woven into it was striking. Purple is seen as a noble color in various cultures. This seems to originate from the fact that purple dye was rare and expensive. This woman, introduced by the nobleman, took full advantage of her situation. As a wife, she shirked her responsibilities, indulged in leisure, squandered the family's money, and frequently had affairs with other men, quickly becoming despised. She wasn't divorced only because of concerns about the nobleman, but as time passed, the influence of the nobility waned. Harshly criticized by the family, she became mentally ill and died, clutching the purple fabric she brought as part of her bridal trousseau. Though considered for incineration due to its high value, the fabric was spared and stored in the warehouse. In the early 20th century, the then owner, unaware of the fabric's history, thought to use it for his daughter's dress, but she suddenly died of an unknown illness. Any attempt to use the fabric in subsequent generations brought misfortune and mysterious illnesses. I introduced this story in my book as a strange tale after reading it from the documents. However, I presented it merely as a legend, without scientific basis. I personally don't believe that the fabric brings misfortune. It's fascinating. Thank you for the interesting story. Is the death of your dad and my husband's former wife due to the curse of that fabric? It's incredible. Marigold left with a laugh, seemingly entertained. Dad, having learned about the fabric's legend, seemed intrigued. When he checked it in the warehouse, he was captivated by its beauty and nobility. Although old, it was well preserved, as if the fabric itself maintained its nobility. Dad, a realist who never minded the legends, thought of making his loungewear from it. Whether related or not, he suddenly fell ill and passed away. It's unclear about Sophia, but according to Thomas, she was strongly drawn to the fabric. Why she was drawn and what she did, we don't know. But could her illness be related? It's a mysterious story with many unknowns, yet Thomas and Mom, now frightened, secured the fabric more tightly and even had it sealed by the church. Why did Marigold take interest in such a tale? An indescribable anxiety enveloped me. Next year, on New Year's Day, celebrating Mom's 80th birthday, born in January, we held a dinner party along with the New Year's celebration. The main guests were Mom and Thomas, a married couple, and Spencer, who had gone to college and returned home. Naturally, Hilbert and I were also there to celebrate. It felt like just yesterday we celebrated her 70th. Telling Mom to stay healthy until her 90s, she happily responded, "I'll do my best." Delicious dishes were plentiful, though ordered from a restaurant not homemade by Marigold. The time passed joyfully. Here's my gift to celebrate Samantha's longevity. As an octogenarian, a noble person deserves a noble color, so I present this purple coat. Mom, eager to wear Marigold's gift, was interrupted as I instinctively snatched and threw it away. It felt like something compelled me to do so. The room fell silent for a moment, then Thomas yelled, "Ruby, what are you doing? That's what Marigold brought for Mom's celebration." "Thomas, you're angry with me for this?" I picked up the coat, showing Thomas its lining. "This fabric? The purple with the red lines in it? Yes, that's the fabric that should be securely stored in our warehouse. Thomas, who was deeply afraid of that fabric, turned pale and looked back at Marigold. How could you think of letting Mom wear such a thing? You knew the story about the fabric, didn't you? Marigold was so flustered that she couldn't respond immediately. I slowly began to speak to Marigold. Mom was in your way, wasn't she? With Mom around, you couldn't freely use the house's assets. Thomas couldn't gain control of the company, and you couldn't benefit yourself. Marigold stepped back as I pinpointed the truth. You seem to be spending quite a bit, despite not having free access to money. Where did that money come from? My words, filled with the certainty that I knew everything, turned Marigold's face from pale to white. I work as a curator at a museum, deeply knowledgeable about local historical items, and always keeping an antenna out for their whereabouts. Lately, many familiar items were caught on this antenna. Upon investigation, I found that these items originated from a woman. That woman, of course, was Marigold. She had been raiding the warehouse and selling valuable items without Thomas's knowledge. When I say I investigated, it was actually Hilbert who did the thorough research. Hilbert runs a management consultancy firm, renowned for his investigative skills. You've even borrowed money from gang-like sources, haven't you? It's interesting what you find when you dig into why you needed so much money. At Hilbert's words, Marigold finally couldn't stand it any longer and collapsed to the floor. Despite being married to Thomas, Marigold had continued her relationship with a man she had been dating before her marriage. This man, unemployed and indulging in gambling, was being financially supported by Marigold. In the midst of Spencer's murmured realization, Mom's sigh of resignation, and Thomas's angry voice, Marigold's world crumbled. Thomas confronted Marigold with divorce, and although she cried and begged for forgiveness, her actions were unforgivable. Thomas decided on divorce and hired a lawyer. Naturally, no one in the family sided with Marigold. She had no choice but to accept the divorce from Thomas and was driven out of the house. Even Marigold's parents were furious, disowning her. The debt borrowed from gang-like sources and the compensation for raiding our warehouse weighed heavily on her, leaving her in a desperate situation. Furthermore, Hilbert's investigation revealed another fact. Marigold was a descendant of a woman who had been married off through a lord's mediation long ago. Could it be that the resentment of a woman who died in bitterness and despair had possessed her descendant and caused harm to Mom and Thomas? The problematic fabric and coat were once again securely stored. We're thinking of consulting experts about what to do in the future. After that incident, Mom handed over all company authority to Thomas and fully retired herself. Spencer, who will join Thomas's company for training after graduating from college, also adds to the positive momentum. I believe Thomas will surely preserve the long-standing whiskey brewery. I continue with the job I love, and am now assigned to decipher newly discovered ancient documents. I do think about wanting a child soon, given the risks of late childbirth, but that's something beyond my control. These days, I find myself wondering if there was anything in the warehouse that could bring good fortune.